What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so today we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos from my past and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be about Iron Man. You see, when it came to Iron Man, the Heroes Reborn reality, they had hired Jim Lee to kind of work on Iron Man. The reason why, because in the late 1990s, as we all know, Marvel had a few properties that were no longer selling. And so what Marvel did was they pushed those characters into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. And so when it came to Heroes Reborn, you had Marvel bring back old creators to work on these different characters they push into that reality. Like, for example, Iron Man was done by Jim Lee, and so was the Fantastic Four. Now, technically, we already did a full story video for the Fantastic Four, but now it's time for Iron Man in the Heroes Reborn reality. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over Heroes Reborn. And so, with that being said, we're going to pick up with some Iron Man today because this is the last book that we have not officially talked about yet when it came to Heroes Reborn. We already did Avengers, Captain America, and also Fantastic Four. But now it's time for Iron Man to get involved in this world. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it was technically a reboot for these characters because when it came to the late 1990s, as we all know, there were some comics out there that were not really selling. And so for Marvel Comics, they're like, this is a perfect chance to go ahead and do a reboot for those characters who are not really selling books anymore. And I kind of want to go ahead and do a quick reminder of what Heroes Reborn was, because when it came to those books not selling, Iron Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Captain America, you had all those different characters in the big event called X-Men Onslaught. But of course, you had the X-Men go up against Onslaught. But once you had the X-Men being able to defeat Onslaught, you had all these different characters run into him. And of course, they were all teleported into a brand new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn, as a way to kick off this reboot. And so when it came to Jim Lee, he was technically tasked to give us a fresh start for the Fantastic Four, but also Iron Man in this brand new reality. So let's go ahead and kind of see what Jim Lee gave us when it came to his Iron Man. Now, when it comes to the opening pages of this storyline, it does start off in the past where we do pick up with this character known as Rebel O'Reilly, really Connor Rebel O'Reilly, who was the best friend for Tony Stark. But when it came to Riley, what he was currently doing was testing out a brand new armor suit that Tony Stark had made. Of course, in this reality, it was called the Prometheum armor. And so while you had O'Reilly out there just testing out the suit, it began to malfunction. The problem was then after that, it blew up. And so, of course, it killed off Tony Stark's best friend who was testing out that brand new suit for him. And that one particular moment is going to carry over into the rest of our story today, because as we jump over to the present day, we see that Tony Stark is now this heartless and ruthless businessman. Like, he just got out of a class action suit that was launched by the people of the state of New York. Of course, he was found not guilty. And so you now have the working class just protesting. And the reason why, because they believe the verdict was unfair, that basically Tony Stark got cleared because he is a rich person. Now, of course, while you have all this happening on live television, you do have a few security guards who work at one of his plants in Buffalo, New York. Now, one of the employees, he just goes crazy when he finds out that Tony Stark is, well, innocent, and he begins to rant about revolution and power, and then out of nowhere he goes ahead and kills off the rest of the guards that he was hanging out with. But then he radios in to his masters, and of course this brings in Hydra into the Heroes Reborn reality. But also the person tells him we now can proceed with Operation Gamma. And so this leads us over to Tony Stark, right? Now for Tony, we see him right now at his penthouse getting ready for a big celebration, right? And so right now you have Jim Lee kind of using this as a way to introduce all the different characters you're going to see in his run on Iron Man. So you had a scientist, Bruce Banner, head of security, Liz Ross, public relations being Happy Hogan, Stark's personal secretary being Pepper Potts. You have a psychiatrist, Leonard Samson, his lawyer, Jennifer Walters, and his government liaison, Jasper Sitwell. Now, for all these different characters, for most of them, they don't like the idea of Tony Stark going out of his way to celebrate the fact that he just won in court. It does seem kind of, the wrong thing to do, especially right now when you have the working class protesting about him. Now, for a brief moment, I kind of want to shift our focus over to Bruce Banner. Here's the reason why, because you have Bruce right now looking at this photo. It's an old photo of him, Reed Richards, Rebel, who died in the past, Tony Stark, and of course, Victor, better known as Doctor Doom. And apparently, they were all close friends. Now, this connection right here will become very important for the rest of the Heroes Reborn storylines that we have to cover. Either way, you do have Liz and Bruce go ahead and join the rest of the crew for Tony Stark's party of the night. And really, once you have Tony begin to celebrate, really more, you have Tony start off the party with a speech. You have Pepper Potts be that person to speak up against him, because to her, what Tony is doing is completely wrong. Like, you have all these different people right now protesting against you. They want you gone. And here you go right now, because you want in court that you believe that you deserve some kind of party. And so you have Pepper go out of her way and throw a drink at Tony. And of course, embarrassing him in front of all his different guests that came to the party tonight. But then for a brief moment, we do jump back over to the Buffalo plant. And when we do, we pick up with Madam Hydra. We see her being able to break into the actual facility, but we also see her getting close to the Gamma Chamber, this weapon that she plans on using. And so with Madam Hydra being there, of course, you do have Liz Ross be informed of some kind of breach. Now, for Bruce Banner, he wants to go with her. And the reason why, because his brand new weapon, the Gamma Bomb, is actually over there as well. So, of course, you do have the two characters lead to see what's going on at the Buffalo plant. But then we shift back over to Pepper Potts, right? Now for Pepper, she does try one last time to break through the shell that Tony Stark put around him, where now he's just emotionless. And so it's her right now trying to have him open up. But for Tony, he continues that trend by telling Pepper that she is officially fired. So just like that, she now has to leave. But right after that, you have Samson try his best to hopefully break through Tony, because with him being his psychiatrist, you would think like, okay, Samson might find a way to enter the mind of Tony, to break through Tony, to hopefully have Tony realize the path he's on right now is the completely wrong path to be on. But of course, Tony stays in that emotionless shell that he put himself in, unfortunately. And so while you have all those different characters trying their best to break through Tony's shell, for Liz and Bruce, they do arrive at the Buffalo plant. Now, when they do arrive at the plant, you have the people in the command tower ask Liz to identify herself. And for Liz, she's like, we never do that, especially when it comes to me. And so you have Liz take over the helicopter and just start shooting at the command tower, because she now knows the plant has been officially taken over by somebody else. Of course, we already know it's Hydra. Now, when it comes to Madam Hydra, she has somebody else on that chopper with Bruce and Liz. And so, of course, Liz is knocked out. But back at the party, right, you have Jasper right now being the last person to talk to Tony about his emotions, about his behavior. And really, when it comes to Tony, he's not really being talked to in a way like Pepper did earlier, or like the other characters did. Because for Jasper, he's kind of like, dude, Tony, you're Tony Stark. You can build an empire in a day. Like, you're at that point in your life, you're so high up in the high class that the whole idea of good and evil no longer applies to you and I, because we have so much power, but so much great things to do in this world. Now, for Jasper, that is when he's also alerted about what's happening right now at the Buffalo plant. And so, of course, he leaves. Now, for Tony, he wants to go as well, so he does. Now, as we jump back over to the plant, we do discover here that really Bruce Banner is working with Hydra. And the reason why, because he believed that Hydra would help him dismantle the gamma bomb, because he realized how dangerous it is. But here's the thing. It's Madam Hydra, an evil organization leader. There's no way she would you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead and dismantle this bomb. No. And so, of course, she tells Bruce, actually, I have a better idea. Let's go ahead and set the bomb off. Now, you do have Bruce try to stop her, but of course, Bruce cannot stop her, so he gets quickly knocked out. Now, for Liz, she does wake up, and when she does wake up, she realizes what's happening at the moment, that Bruce is right now inside the actual bomb. And so, of course, she's right now trying to get him out of the bomb, but she can't get the code to work. Now, once you do have Bruce wake up, he realizes what's happening at the moment, that currently he's inside the gamma bomb. But right now, he also realizes the failsafe has been turned off. So if this bomb goes off, millions of people are going to be affected by gamma radiation. And so for Bruce, he kind of realized he has no choice here. You see, they're in a silo right now. And so he is able to drop the bomb 13 miles into the earth. Of course, he's also inside the bomb as well. So just like that, he says goodbye to Liz, and there is a small explosion. Now, when Tony and also Jasper arrive where the plant used to be at, the plant is completely destroyed, but they do see this crater, but they also see this green creature coming out where the plant used to be at. And so we're now getting our first appearance of Heroes Reborn Hulk. And so just like that, Bruce and the Hulk in this reality. Now, real quick, I kind of want to explain things when it came to the idea of Heroes Reborn. Let me explain, because like I said earlier, you had different characters go into Onslaught, and with them doing that, they were transported into the Heroes Reborn universe. But when it came to Bruce Banner, the Hulk fought against Onslaught and defeated Onslaught alongside with the X-Men. Now, we were kind of left to believe the Hulk would not be affected by the Onslaught event because he didn't go into Onslaught like the Avengers or Fantastic Four did. But Bruce Banner was somehow teleported into this reality. And so with that being said, for Bruce Banner, in his reality, he's once again the Hulk. And you do have him throw a rock to bring the chopper that Tony and Jasper were on. Now, we do see that Tony and Jasper did survive the crash, but you have Tony right now trying to drag Jasper away from the crash site. But while doing that, you have Jasper point out that Tony got stabbed by one of the falling pieces of the chopper. So, of course, right now, the man needs some help, some medical help. Now, we also learn here that for Tony, there was such a reason why he had his plant shut down many years ago, because this is the same place that his best friend died at the very beginning of the storyline, O'Reilly. But also, this is where he kept another Iron Man armor suit. And so we see Tony using that suit as a way to kind of keep him alive long enough to allow him to get back over to a hospital. But first, he has to handle a situation, and that would be the Hulk. And so to wrap up the first chapter of this brand new not brand new, but his old Jim Lee Iron Man series, it leads into issue number 2, where it's going to be Iron Man fighting against the Hulk. And so this leads us into the second issue of this series, where it's now going to be the Hulk going up against Iron Man. Now, for Tony Stark, he does not call himself Iron Man. Matter of fact, it's the Hulk who calls him Iron Man because of the way he looks. But either way, when it comes to Tony, he realized that currently the Hulk is holding on to Liz. Now, for Tony, he has no idea what exactly happened yet so far, but he does know one thing. he got to stop the Hulk as a way to free Liz. So you do have Hulk being able to do some damage at first on Tony, but you did have Tony find a way to briefly knock out the Hulk. Now, with the Hulk being knocked out for a few seconds, it allows Tony and Liz to have a conversation about what exactly happened here at this facility. And so this kind of leads into Liz explaining things to Tony like, hey, listen, so you had the gamma bomb, you had Bruce try his best to save the day, you had Hydra trying to take over this facility. Like, she gives Tony the full breakdown. But the thing is, Tony and also Liz have not realized that the Hulk is Bruce Banner. But either way, you do have the Hulk wake back up. And when he does, just like that, it's now time for round 2 for Tony to fight against the Hulk. Now, while you do have the two characters fighting against one another, you have Tony realize that the armor suit he's currently wearing at the moment right now can't take too many more hits from the Hulk. And that kind of shows how powerful the Hulk is right now at this point in time. Now, this battle does take place near Niagara Falls. And the reason why I'm bringing that up because at the very end of this one particular issue, you do have Tony realize he's losing power at the moment. And so what he does, he pulled out a live wire as a way to recharge himself a tad bit, but it also used that live wire as a way to shock the Hulk. Now, with him doing that, you do have both Hulk and Iron Man get knocked out. But both characters, they do fall into Niagara Falls, kind of leaving us wondering like what in the world could possibly happen to Tony down the road. And so as we dive into the third issue, we're really picking up with the Fantastic Four arriving at the site, the Buffalo site, to figure out what exactly went down. Because the Hulk and Tony had officially disappeared. And so with them both being gone, it's Fantastic Four right now figuring out what exactly happened here. Now for Reed, let's not forget, him and Tony were best friends back in college. And matter of fact, that's very important because you have Jasper just walk up and say, you know what, I kind of find it weird that Reed Richards, Tony's old college best friend, had only came back in his life once he had disappeared. Like it's him saying that Reed may had a hand in Tony disappearing. But either way, for all the characters there, they have not put 2 to 2 together like, hey, you know what? There's a possibility that Iron Man is Tony Stark. In their mind, Iron Man and Tony are two completely different people. But either way, for Fantastic Four, their main goal right now is to find, well, Tony Stark. And so that kind of leads us over to Pepper Potts. Now remember, she got fired earlier by Tony. And so of course right now, it's her just trying to figure out what's next for her life. But then she hears a noise. Now, as she does walk towards the noise in her house, she does tell us that when it came to the Buffalo plant, only 2 people knew about the armor being there. Tony and also Pepper Potts. And so, of course, Pepper, once she does go find Iron Man in her garage, she definitely knows it's Tony Stark inside the armor, who, of course, right now needs her help because the armor suit was keeping him alive. That suit right now is beginning to lose power. Now we do transition over to Madam Hydra, and really these 2 pages are really put there as a way to kind of help us to world build, to bring in more characters in this overall storyline for Heroes Reborn. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Madam Hydra, she's very upset about the fact that somebody's late for a meeting. And we kind of find out that person is no other than Whirlwind. Of course, a good old classic Marvel villain who's now being, reworked in this Heroes Reborn reality. And so now we transition back over to Pepper and Tony. Now for Pepper, it's her goal right now to take Tony over to a different plant, the one in Westchester. And the reason why, because to allow Tony to find a way to power the suit back up as a way to save his life. Here's the problem with that though. You see, for Pepper, she got fired by Tony in the first chapter. So the guard right now, who's currently letting her in the facility, he has no idea that she got fired. But once he does find out that she no longer works for Stark, that means their time is very limited. And so she has to hurry, get Tony inside, get him all hooked up, and hopefully get that suit repowered to keep Tony alive. And that kind of leads into a situation because moments later, you do have Pepper hook up Tony to the device, right? And it's powering him back up again, allowing him to stay alive. But here's the thing, they're in the lower part of this plant. But the very top part of the plant is the Fantastic Four. And of course, right now, they're getting readings about what's happening at the lower part of this plant. And so you do have Ben Graham just rush down there, making a hole into that room. Now, you do have Tony trying his best to fight against the Thing to protect Pepper, but you also have Reed appear as well. Now, once you do have everyone just chill out, you have Tony realize that as Reed Richards right there, who's now the leader of Fantastic Four, but also his old college friend. Like I said earlier, for everyone who has saw Iron Man fight against the Hulk, they have not put two to two together, meaning that they don't know that Iron Man is Tony Stark. And for Pepper, she believes it's probably best that no one knows that Iron Man is Tony Stark, because you do have Pepper tell the Fantastic Four, like, hey, listen, so this is Iron Man, and he's Tony Stark's bodyguard. And you have Iron Man saying, like, oh yeah, that's right, I am his bodyguard. As a matter of fact, Tony is in the other room right now. Let me go ahead and get him for you. And so you do the whole like classic trope where you have the superhero disappear, but you didn't have the actual person appear. Again, no one is able to put two to two together. So it's like, oh, there goes Iron Man, and here comes Tony Stark. Now for Tony, it's him beginning to change, because remember, at the very beginning of the storyline, he was very emotionless, heartless. And now it's him kind of going back to his old ways. It's kind of like him being Iron Man had brought him back to his old ways again, which means we're going to see more of Tony being Iron Man in this reality. Now, with all that being said, the book does not end on that note right there, because we do shift over to another character who's about to make an appearance in the Heroes Reborn universe. Because now we shift over to Arthur Parks. Now, when it comes to Arthur Parks, he had a company. The problem was Stark bought the company and sold the company. And so, of course, for Arthur, he was basically left with nothing. And so he's very upset by that. And so now it's Arthur doing one last experiment on him as a way to go after Tony, most likely turning himself into the living laser. But this is where we're going. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over Iron Man when it comes to Heroes Reborn. And really, I'm kind of hyped to sit down and cut this two-part storyline, because technically there's not a whole lot going on, but it's still kind of cool to see Iron Man deal with different characters in his early days in brand new reality. Now, just in case we have anybody joining us when it comes to our coverage over the Heroes Reborn universe, let's not forget that Heroes Reborn came out of the idea that in the late 1990s for Marvel Comics, they had a lot of different comics that were no longer selling like they used to back in the day. And so what Marvel did was they pushed those books into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. And they brought back a talent to kind of give these characters a fresh start in that brand new reality. So Fantastic Four, Avengers, Iron Man, and of course Captain America as well. And so when it came to Iron Man, it was really more Jim Lee and also Scott Lobdell kind of sitting down and reworking the mythos of Iron Man when it came to Marvel Comics. Now, in our last video, we kind of sat down and basically tackled the idea of Iron Man, you know, his origin, how he became Iron Man, but also him fighting against the Hulk in that first storyline. And so now, in this video, it's really more of us just sitting down and seeing Iron Man deal with some low-level characters in this brand new reality to kind of give the writers a small break before getting into a big crossover in Heroes Reborn. Now, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we're really kind of picking up with Liz Ross as she pays a visit to her father, well, General Ross. Well, in this reality, he's not a general. He's chief of staff. But here's the thing, because for Ross, he's very upset about the idea of the Hulk just flat out embarrassing the American government in the last storyline. So he wants to get out there to find the Hulk. But the thing is, he's right now on medical leave. So he's not really allowed to go after the Hulk like he truly wants to. Now, for Liz Ross, she was there when it came to the Hulk first appearing in this reality. You see, the thing was, she watched Bruce Banner take the gamma bomb and go into the Earth. And the thing is, she believed Bruce died when the bomb went off, but then thanks to the bomb, it had created this powerful being known as the Hulk. She hasn't realized that those two different characters are the same person. So for her mind right now, her goal is to find the Hulk as a way to get payback for, well, Bruce Banner. Now, let's not forget, she's also working as the head of security for Tony Stark. And so as we do transition over to Tony Stark, we see him right now trying to begin the process of building what he wants to call an armory, beginning the idea of being this hero in this reality. Now, for Iron Man, he kind of has to wear the armor suit at all times because technically it's what's keeping him alive. Now, by this point in the storyline, he has been able to kind of move away from most of the armors. Right now, it's kind of just like the chest piece that's on his body that's keeping him alive at the moment. Now, when it comes to Iron Man, you do have Pepper inform him that he does have a meeting with someone. And we see he has that meeting with Jasper Sitwell. Now, for Jasper, he is Tony's government liaison. Now, here's the thing, though, guys, because for Jasper, he and other people don't truly know that Tony Stark is Iron Man. We're playing with the idea of, well, Tony Stark has this bodyguard, and that would be Iron Man. The only person who truly knows is Pepper Potts. Now, with that being said, for Tony, he had asked Jasper for information on Bruce Banner, his death, also the different projects he was working on, like the Gamma Bomb. Now, again, Jasper is Tony's government liaison, so technically he works for the government. And so you have Jasper say, no. Like, you cannot know anything that Bruce was working on, even though he did work for your company and he did create the bomb. The bomb was created for the government. It was a government project. So they're right now saying Tony has no right to know what that project was all about because it is a government project, even though his company had technically made the project. And the thing was, Tony and a few other people had signed off on those different kind of deals for the government. And so now for Tony, he's kind of wondering what other projects have been done without him actually knowing. But you do have Pepper inform Tony that he has another meeting with, well, Arthur Parks. Now, Arthur Parks had a company known as Parks Fiber Optics. That company was bought by Tony and sold by Tony's company. So, of course, there goes the entire company. So for Arthur, he was left with nothing. The people who worked for Arthur were also left with nothing. The people who were depending on all the different projects from that company were left with nothing. Now, this is Tony trying to apologize because for him, he's like, listen, dude, that was the past me and I made some big mistakes. But this is me now in this life right here trying to make things better. But for Arthur, it does not matter at all because he lost everything. A lot of people lost everything. So he came here to kill off Tony Stark. You see, when it came to Arthur, what he did was he had replaced his central nervous system with fiber optics. So, of course, he's now becoming the living laser. That's why I said at the very beginning of this video, is Iron Man now dealing with some low-level characters? Because even though this does seem like a big threat, by the end of this chapter, you're going to have Tony being able to get rid of this guy and move on to the next villain in the next chapter. But now we have the transition over to Leonard Samson. Now, when it comes to Samson, he is Tony Stark's psychiatrist, right? And so he's right now just chilling in his office. And as we all know, in the old reality, him and the Hulk have close ties to one another. But either way, when it comes to Samson, he's just chilling in his office. And then he gets a call from Bruce Banner. Now, earlier I had mentioned that to the world, they believe that Bruce died when the bomb had went off. But in reality, he's alive. And so for Samson, he's kind of like, Bruce, you're alive? But as we do switch over to Tony fighting against the living laser, this is why I said like earlier, hey, this battle will not last that long, because for the living laser, the longer he used his newfound abilities against Tony, slowly his body is turning into a living laser. Like his body, his skin is just breaking apart. He is slowly melting away. But for living laser, he can't stop. He wants to kill off Tony. He wants to get paid back against him. And so it leads into the moment where he basically dies. But before he dies, he asks Tony, like, was it worth it? Sorry, Tony asked him, was it worth it? And Arthur says, yes, it was worth it. I would do it again if I had to find a way to kill you and everyone close to you. But as this chapter closes, for Pepper Potts, when she does go back home, she realized that somebody had just broke into her apartment. And this leads into the second low-level villain that Tony has to deal with, and that will be Whirlwind. And so as we get into the next chapter, we're really picking up with Tony right now being confronted by Whirlwind. Now, this is the present moment, but we're kind of left to wonder how in the world we got to this moment right here where now it's Tony being confronted by, well, Whirlwind. Now, before we go back in the past to see how we got that moment right there, you have Tony reveal that he knows almost everything about Whirlwind. Like, for example, his real name, or the name using right now, Dave Cannon. He also knows that Whirlwind's old name was the Human Top, but he also was called Charles Matthews, his first original name, and he was born in Kansas City, Missouri. And so for Whirlwind, he's kind of like, how in the world does he know everything about me? So we begin our flashback leading up to that moment with Tony Stark being Iron Man, but meeting up with Liz Ross. Now for Liz, she's very upset about the idea of there being Iron Man, because to her, she was not informed of the idea of someone being around and being Iron Man. Like in her mindset, she really believed that, okay, as the head of security of Tony Stark's company, I should have been sat down with Tony about the process of him hiring a bodyguard, especially somebody in an Iron Man suit like this, because this is pretty serious. But again, she has no idea that Tony is Iron Man. Now, for Iron Man, he does understand why she feels like that. And let's not forget, when it came to Tony, when his best friend died a long time ago, he shut down. He became heartless, emotionless. And so now with him trying to regain his lost emotions, he kind of realized what Liz is currently feeling at the moment right now. And so after that meeting, you then have Tony get a call from, well, Pepper Potts. But in reality, it's not Pepper. It's actually Whirlwind. And it's Whirlwind saying, hey, you know what? I got Pepper. If you want her back, you got to meet up with me here at this location, but by yourself. Don't bring Iron Man or anyone else at all. So, of course, you do have Tony go over there, except when he does pull up in his car gets blown up because it's Whirlwind saying like, okay, cool, it's now time for me to finish the job, because he was sent here by Hydra as an assassin to kill off Tony Stark. But now we had to switch back over to Samson, who's currently on the phone with Bruce Banner, who tells Samson like, hey, listen, so that big, huge green creature that you've been seeing on the news, yeah, that's me. Now, you do have Bruce kind of end the call very quickly, but we also learn here that for Samson, his phone has been bugged. He had no idea that technically his phone has been bugged by Jasper Sitwell, who now knows about the Hulk. So his main goal is to find the Hulk, and we have no idea what Jasper plans to do with Bruce when him being the Hulk. And so this kind of leads us back over to Tony, right? Now you have Tony trying to deal with Whirlwind still. But I kind of like this because it's Tony dealing with Whirlwind without being Iron Man. And I kind of like that because it shows early on that for Tony, he can take on different threats by just being Tony. Because for Tony, he has all these different techs to use against different types of opponents. And so once you have Tony make sure that Pepper is well protected and he runs away, making sure that Whirlwind will follow him, you have Tony turn on his kinetic intake converter. Now with this device, it does pull Whirlwind into it. But the more he tries to move, the more the device is going to pull Whirlwind into it. And so you had Tony say, if you just give up, it'll stop. But for Whirlwind, he can't give up. And so he continues to move around. Unfortunately, it also kills them off as well. So technically, in his two-part storyline, Tony killed off two of his villains, Living Laser and Whirlwind, just like that. Now, when it comes to Madam Hydra, she does get word of the death of Whirlwind, but not by any of her agents, by somebody who also works for Hydra, but higher up. And that'll be the Mandarin. Now, we do learn here for the Mandarin, he wants to make sure that Tony does not die. So it's him saying like, hey, listen, you need to capture Tony, but you also need to make sure that you don't kill off Tony Stark at all. Now, as we close on this chapter, we do pick back up with Tony Stark once again. Now, for Tony, it's him right now being confronted by Pepper, right? And for Tony, he wants to know, has he done anything really good recently besides being Iron Man? And so for Pepper, she tells him like, yeah, dude, technically, you're the reason why we have the Avengers. Now, the book does not really tell us like what he actually did, but we kind of get the idea that thanks to Tony, he had built Avengers Island, the base the Avengers are currently using. But for Tony, he never heard of the Avengers. And so this begins the process of Tony being brought into the rest of the books alongside with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers as well. But this also leads into the first crossover across all the different titles of Heroes Reborn. But we're not technically there just yet because we still got to cover at least a few more stories for the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four. But this Okay, so it's time for us to kind of sit down and actually cover, well, the first ever crossover for the Heroes Reborn reality, better known as the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is technically a four-part storyline, but not really. It's kind of weird because all the 6 issues of all the different books were technically used as a way to tell this huge crossover between all the different titles. Now, just in case we have anybody joining us when it comes to our coverage over Heroes Reborn, let me explain what Heroes Reborn was all about. You see, the late 1990s for Marvel Comics, they had some books that were no longer selling. So, for example, Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man also, well, technically, when it comes to Captain America, he was selling, but he was also part of that deal as well when it came to Marvel canceling all their books that were supposedly not selling and giving those characters a fresh start in a brand new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. And you had Marvel go out of their way to bring back old creators to see if that would get fans back into their books once again. So like Jim Lee, for example. Now, when it came to the Industrial Revolution, this first crossover, it did take place in all the 6 issues of all the different books that were part of Heroes Reborn. So Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and of course Captain America as well. But here's the thing. Most of the actual crossover takes place in Avengers and Iron Man. When it comes to Fantastic Four and, well, good old Steve Rogers, yes, their books are still part of the crossover, but technically not? It's really weird. Let me explain as we dive into Fantastic Four issue number 6. Because Fantastic Four issue number 6 is actually the conclusion to our last video for this series, but also the prologue for the actual crossover. But in the last few pages is the actual crossover. You'll see what I mean here, because as we get into the opening page of the storyline, we pick up with Alicia Masters. Now, for Alicia Masters, by this point in the timeline for Heroes Reborn, she just met Ben Grimm, like literally just met him, and has been trying to have a date with the guy. The problem is right now he's late. And the reason why, because, well, currently the Fantastic Four are in Latveria dealing with Doctor Doom, but also the Super Skrull. And this kind of required us to kind of give you guys a quick rundown about what exactly happened in the earlier issues leading up to this particular moment. Let me explain. So, in the earlier issues, as we all know, for the Fantastic Four, they got their powers by being hit with cosmic radiation. But here's the reason why they were hit with cosmic radiation. You see, when it came to our heroes, really Reed Richards, he was working on a project where the spacecraft was going to be used to study an anomaly out in space. The problem was that out of nowhere, Wyatt Wingfoot, who worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., just took over the entire project. And the reason why, because apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. and the president agreed to go ahead and destroy the anomaly. Now, technically, when it came to Wyatt Wingfoot, he was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but that was not the real Wyatt Wingfoot. But at that time, we had no idea. All we knew was that he was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but also working for Dr. Doom. Now, for our heroes, they used a prototype spacecraft to follow Wyatt's men into space to stop them, but of course they failed, but also got hit with cosmic radiation. Now, that space anomaly, it had crashed on Earth in Wakanda. That was the Silver Surfer. Now, you did have Dr. Doom go out of his way to capture Silver Surfer so that he'll then be able to absorb that energy and give it to himself. But when it came to Wyatt Wingfoot, the fake Wyatt Wingfoot, we had learned that he was a Super Skrull working behind the scenes who also wanted to absorb the energy of the Silver Surfer for himself. And so we're technically all the way caught up now. And the thing is, none of this does anything for the actual crossover that we have to talk about. So don't worry, I'll put a timestamp down below to tell you where to jump to if you're trying to get into the actual crossover. But this kind of leads into us getting the reason why the Super Skrull is here for. Like, what is his actual purpose on Earth? Well, the reason why, because when it came to the Super Skrull, as we all know, he's part of the Skrull race. But at this point, their home world has been attacked by, well, Galactus. And so it's the Super Skrull kind of warning our heroes all like, hey, you found the Silver Surfer, but you have no idea why he's technically here for, because he's right now trying to find a world for his master Galactus to, well, absorb. And so it's our heroes kind of learning about the Skrull race, but also learning about Silver Surfer and Galactus as well, all in one. Now, with the Super Skrull having the powers of cosmic inside of him, he now has the ability to fight against all our heroes, but also Dr. Doom as well. As a matter of fact, we get that classic throwback to how the Super Skrull is able to use the different powers of the different members of the Fantastic Four as well. But this kind of leads into a very quick ending, and the reason why, because we got to get into that crossover, right? So we do pick up with Dr. Doom. The man got a plan. So you have Dr. Doom inform Susan to use her powers to redirect the energy that Super Skrull shooting out at the moment over to the Silver Surfer. With him doing that, bam, just like that, Surfer is back on his feet again, getting ready to battle against the Super Skrull. But here's the problem though. You see, as their battle goes on, the reactor underneath Victor's castle is about to, well, explode, it seems like. And so for our heroes, they have to escape. Now for Dr. Doom, he does not want to leave. So he goes down to where the reactor is at to kind of save it, but also gather other things as well. For the rest of our heroes, like the Fantastic Four and Black Panther, they get the heck out of there while you have Silver Surfer and the Super Skrull continue to battle against one another. And so this kind of leads into our heroes heading back home, but technically because for Ben Grimm, he got word about what happened on Avengers Island. So this right here kind of begins the process of the Fantastic Four being brought into the crossover, but also what we saw in our last video for the Avengers. Now for our heroes, they're also kind of wondering, like, did Dr. Doom survive? Now, as they fly away, we do see our heroes being watched by the Silver Surfer. So of course it's kind of like, hey guys, don't worry, he's not gone just yet. he might play a role down the road in later storyline for our heroes. Now, a little bit after that moment right there, we do pick up with Doctor Doom, but like in a different lab away from the castle that got blown up just recently. And so for Doctor Doom, while being in his lab, he's then confronted by one of his Doom bots who's like, hey, listen, boss, I got some word to tell you, like what's happening right now back in the States. The whole idea of the Incredible Hulk. Now, in our last video for the Avengers, when it came to the Hulk, he attacked Avengers Island and like wrecked the entire team in a few pages. Literally just beat them all down. But when it came to Doctor Doom, he didn't hear about the Hulk until, well, this exact moment. And so once you have Doctor Doom being able to collect different information about the Hulk, he realized how powerful the Hulk truly is. Now, for Doctor Doom, it's him also telling us the Hulk could be more powerful than the Silver Surfer because it's gamma radiation. It's maybe stronger than cosmic radiation. Who knows technically, but you do have Doctor Doom go out of his way to use his computers to kind of figure out the true secret behind the Hulk. Like, who is the Hulk? And so after like a brief moment, he realized or discovers the Hulk is Bruce Banner. And so we kind of get this flashback, right? In this flashback, we kind of get reminded that in the college days for Doctor Doom, he was part of this small circle of other characters we've seen so far in the Heroes Reborn reality. So like Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Hank Pym, Bruce Banner, and Rebel. Now, by this point in timeline, Rebel died in an earlier issue of Iron Man. But anyways, for Doctor Doom, he remembers having this conversation with Bruce Banner. And when it came to Bruce Banner, he even talked back then about creating the gamma bomb. But he only created it as a way to see it not be used at all. Now, Doctor Doom calls Bruce Banner an idiot. So let me get this straight. You're going to create a bomb to never be used at all, to just sit there. And for me, I kind of agree with Doctor Doom because as we saw for Bruce Banner, he did create the gamma bomb, but for the military. And of course, he even then teamed up with Hydra, hoping that it would get dismantled. But of course, it wasn't. It was technically used, but to create the Hulk, as we all saw in the earlier videos of Iron Man. Now, for Doctor Doom, he kind of realized that with the Hulk being out there, all his old college friends, Reed, Hank Pym, and also Tony Stark and Bruce Banner will be involved in some type of situation where they all could just be killed off, allowing Doctor Doom the chance to just roll over the world. And so it's him saying like, hey, you know what? I'm going to sit here and wait to see the actual outcome of this event. And so we now jump into the second chapter. That last few pages where Doctor Doom's in his lab finding out about Bruce being the Hulk, that was really the prologue for the Industrial Revolution. So now we can fully dive into the actual, crossover where we do pick up with Avengers issue number 6. Now, when it comes to Avengers issue number 6, it picks up with Bruce Banner breaking into the Baxter building. Now, here's the thing, because Homeboy does not get that far because he is instantly confronted by most of the members of the Fantastic Four, the Human Torch, Susan Storm, and also Ben Grimm. But while you do have Bruce be confronted by these three characters, he tells them like, hey, listen, I just need to talk to Reed Richards. And so you do have Reed appear. Now, Reed does appear. This kind of picks up where our last Avengers video left off at, because when he came to Hulk, he went over to Avengers Island, just wrecked the entire place. The problem is that there is a gamma core there. If that core blows up, boom, there goes the island, but also a huge chunk of the nation as well. And so right now for Bruce, he's there asking for the help of Reed Richards. Again, another callback to the idea that Reed and Bruce and a few other characters were good friends back in college. And so now we do switch over to Avengers Island. Now remember, for most of the people in the world right now, they don't know that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. But this crossover kind of gives our heroes the ability to figure out like, okay, Bruce is the Hulk. Cool. But for right now, no one knows that. But when we do jump over to Avengers Island, we see how badly damaged it was by the Hulk fighting against the Avengers. Now, you do have S.H.I.E.L.D. being able to find Hellcat, Steve Rogers. The thing is, Swordsman and Hawkeye are critically injured at the moment. So for right now, they're not going to be in this actual crossover. Now, when it comes to Nick Fury, he tries to send in a team to deal with the Gamma Core. The problem is that because it's already badly damaged, some of that radiation of the core is already leaking out. So it comes to some people trying to get close to it. Unfortunately, they can't. They die in a matter of seconds when they try to get close to the actual core. And so for Nick Fury, he kind of realized he needs some better tech or something to kind of help out with this situation. Now, again, for Nick Fury, he has no idea that Bruce is the Hulk, but also Bruce right now is getting the help of Reed Richards. Now, that leads into Nick Fury being confronted by Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, he's the reason why the Hulk went over to Avengers Island in our last video and just basically wrecked the entire place. Because for Loki, he's working with the Enchantress. And when it came to Loki, he wanted the Avengers off the board. So did she as well, but for a completely different reason. For Enchantress, she wanted them out of the way to allow her the ability to grab the Scarlet Witch. And the reason why, because she believes the Scarlet Witch is, well, her daughter. Either way, you do have Loki right now confronting Nick Fury, and for Nick, he's kind of wondering, who in the world is this guy here at the moment? Now, we do briefly jump over to the Fantastic Four, and you do have our heroes arrive to Avengers Island. The thing is, when you do arrive, you didn't have our heroes realize how badly the place is damaged thanks to the Hulk, but they don't have any idea what did actually damage this island just yet. But they do find Thor just laying there, still unconscious at the moment. But now it's time for us to get Iron Man into the book as well, because around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Iron Man, he was not technically working with the other characters just yet, the Fantastic Four or the Avengers. And so when he does arrive for Nick Fury, this is the one guy he knows nothing about. He's kind of like, who in the world is this Iron Man guy? Now, for Iron Man, he does want to help out with this situation. And Nick says no at first. But you have Iron Man say, like, listen, my boss, Tony Stark, because I'm his bodyguard, he built most of your equipment. So I have all the different codes to technically shut you down. So how about this? Allow me to help you, or I'm gonna go ahead and shut everything down that you're currently using that was created by Tony Stark, including Avengers Island. And so you have Nick say, fine, you get 1 hour, and Tony leaves to go see the other heroes. But let's not forget that it was Iron Man's comics that gave us the Hulk in this reality. Matter of fact, for Tony Stark and for most people, they still believe that Bruce is dead and not realizing that Bruce is the Hulk. So when you have Ben Grimm flying past Iron Man because Thor punched him that hard, and you have the Human Torch go grab the thing, you have the two guys inform Tony like, Bruce is alive. And for Tony, he can't believe what he's currently hearing. And so this kind of leads into the Fantastic Four meeting up with the Avengers. Now, technically, at this point in time, the two teams had already met, because when it came to Namor, when he had attacked Manhattan, the Avengers helped out with that situation alongside with the Fantastic Four. But with that being said, with the two teams coming together, you have Reed tell the Avengers like, hey, listen, I brought somebody else who could possibly help us out, and that would be Bruce Banner. The problem is that you have Hellcat being able to realize that Bruce is the Hulk, because of course both characters had the same scent. Now of course that makes Bruce kind of freak out a tad bit. And so while you have everyone discussing like what to do with the Gamma Core, you didn't have Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk to wrap up the second chapter of this storyline. And so now we do switch over to Iron Man issue number 6. Now, with this issue right here, we do pick up with the Hulk just throwing a tantrum. Now, you do have Susan being able to kind of keep the Hulk at bay, which honestly, I'm kind of impressed. And the reason why, because This is still early on in Heroes Reborn, so for Susan, even though she has technically learned how to use her powers in better ways, I'm just surprised to see how strong she is now to be able to kind of keep up a force field to keep the Hulk at bay. Now, they're also kind of hoping that if the Hulk does calm down, he'll turn back into Bruce Banner. But you have Reed say that's not going to happen because with the whole idea of the gamma radiation leaking out because of the gamma core, Bruce will stay as a Hulk until they're able to handle that situation right there. And while you have all this stuff just popping off, you have Loki just being able to keep teasing Nick Fury. I kind of like this a lot because it's just him truly being the god of mischief. And the thing is, Nick Fury is the only person who sees Loki at the moment. So for everybody else are kind of like, hey, who is Nick talking to? And why in the world is he freaking out at the moment? But in reality, it is Nick Fury just talking to Loki. But as we do switch back over to our heroes, you do have Reed and Tony being able to figure out what they have to do to save the day. Now, they say they have to redirect the gamma core energy into the Earth core. Now, here's the thing, because while you do have the two characters talking to one another, Reed kind of realized that Tony is Iron Man, but just pretending that, yeah, you're Tony Stark's bodyguard. That's right, cool, But in reality, Reed knows for sure. Now, when it comes to Tony and Reed, like I said, they had realized they had to redirect the energy of the gamma core into the Earth core to save the nation being hit with gamma radiation. Now, I feel like that's a bad idea. But you do have Thor and also Ben Grimm go inside this room to kind of help redirect that energy into the right area. But it kind of leads into Ben Grimm and also really Thor working together to kind of clear a path over to the gamma core. The problem is that when they do get close to the gamma core, it begins to hit them pretty hard, which means that they're no longer really able to change direction of the energy of the gamma core into the Earth core. Now, while you have Iron Man trying to talk to Reed through one of his many computers, Hulk is just talking so loud that for Tony, he can't hear Reed. And so you have Tony go off on the Hulk, like, Hulk, listen, right now, you're not helping. And technically right now, the only thing you're doing is ticking me off. If you want to help out, get down there and redirect that energy to the Earth core. Because if you don't, 12 million people are going to die very soon. Now, this is Tony kind of talking to the Hulk like Hulk is not really intelligent at all, but it does seem like the Hulk does have some kind of intelligence because his connection to Bruce Banner. But right after you have Tony just go off on the Hulk, Hulk's like, okay, you know what? Let me go ahead and help out. You're right. I should totally help out. It's a quick switch where the Hulk is no longer this man-child, but now actually acting like, well, a hero. And this kind of leads into a very rushed ending for this chapter, but technically there's still one more chapter left. It's an epilogue, and it gets weird all over again how they kind of did this whole crossover. And you see what I mean here in a moment, but you do have the Hulk being able to help out with the gamma core, and the day seems to be saved. And you have the Human Torch being able to absorb all the heat energy that was coming out of the gamma core and release it in the air. So just like that, the day is saved. Now for Steve Rogers, he kind of feels like this is the official end to the Avengers. But you have Iron Man say, no, not just yet. And this leads into the epilogue, which is in Captain America issue number 6. Here comes the problem with that issue. Because as we dive into Captain America issue number 6, the first storyline has nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution. Instead, it's more of us seeing Cable teaming up with Steve Rogers. And that's really it. Like literally, you have Cable appear in this reality. And this is Cable from the main Marvel universe who was transported over to this reality. And so it's him right now just helping out Steve Rogers to fight against different members of the AIM organization, but also Steve fighting against some characters he fought in the past in this timeline, but also in the old main Marvel Universe timeline as well. But let's not forget, around this time in the main Marvel Universe, there was no Avengers. There was no Fantastic Four because they had quote unquote died in the Onslaught crossover. So for Cable to be here in this reality, to fight alongside with Steve Rogers, he's kind of like, man, this is great because the guy reminds me of my Steve Rogers from Mine Reality, who I fought alongside with in the Onslaught crossover. But either way, for Steve, he's just fighting against AIM, fighting against MODOK, and also fighting against Baron Zemo as well. But for Cable, as he continues to watch Steve Rogers, he also realized that Steve has another Bucky in this reality. And matter of fact, we met her in our last video for Steve Rogers in this reality. And that would be Rebecca Barnes. Now, let's not forget, guys, when it comes to the Heroes Reborn reality, when it first came out in Marvel Comics, we were kind of left to believe to be a separate reality from the main Marvel universe. But then over time, with all the different clues popping up left and right, interviews, all that different stuff, we kind of learned that this is actually a pocket dimension in the main Marvel universe. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now, because for Rebecca Barnes, you could technically say that she is the sister to, well, the Winter Soldier over in the main Marvel universe, because technically she is a grandchild to, well, Winter Soldier's grandparents as well. But either way, it's just Cable watching Steve and her working together as a team. Now, by this point in the timeline, she's officially Bucky. The last time we saw her, she was not Bucky at all just yet. But really, for the storyline that takes place at first in this issue, it does wrap up very quickly where you do have Steve Rogers being able to take down AIM, MODOK, and also, well, Baron Zemo as well. But right after doing that, you didn't have Cable get pulled back into his reality. Now, he kind of gets this idea that the reality he was just at, the hero he just met, could be his hero from his reality, just lost in a different one. And so his main goal now for Cable supposedly is to find a way to bring back Steve Rogers and the rest of the heroes. But he does go back home. But this leads into literally the last 2 pages of the Industrial Revolution. And like I said, it's just random to me because you get Nick Fury just going back over to his room, right, to finally get some kind of rest, except that is when he's confronted by Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and they're all there to say like, hey, listen, Nick, so we are no longer going to have the Avengers working for S.H.I.E.L.D. The Avengers are now officially going in their own direction. And that's really it. And I'm kind of like, what is the actual point to have these 2 pages kept to this one particular issue? These 2 pages could have been used over in the Iron Man issue that you just technically finished the story at. And so, yeah, that's the end for the Industrial Revolution crossover for the Heroes Reborn, their first event in this, well, pocket dimension. But with Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality, almost to the X-Men right there, we do pick up with some more Iron Man comics. Now, here's the thing, because in the opening pages for Iron Man issue number 7, we really do pick up with Madam Hydra. Now remember, Madam Hydra is of course the person in charge of, well, Hydra, but it's also her meeting up with the Mandarin. Now, here's the thing, because the Mandarin did tell Madam Hydra that he wanted Tony Stark. But here's the big catch though. He told her, do not kill him. I have some business be done with Tony Stark, so bring him over to me alive. The problem was that she didn't follow directions very well. She sent an assassin after Tony Stark, better known as Whirlwind. Now, Whirlwind was killed off by Tony, technically on accident, but like it was a 2-part storyline where Tony did kill off 2 different villains in a very short period of time. But either way, for the Mandarin, he's all like, listen, I'm going to give you and your empire, of course, he's talking about Hydra, another chance to bring me Tony Stark like I asked you to. But here comes the big problem, though. You see, for Madam Hydra, she kind of realized the Mandarin tried to hide his true form. And the reason why, because in the entire time they had their conversation, it was the Mandarin just playing mind games on her. But also, every single time she meets up with him, he's always appearing in a different form. So she has no idea what the Mandarin truly looks like. And so now we do switch over to Iron Man. Now let's not forget, this storyline does take place right after the whole Industrial Revolution storyline. And so because of that storyline right there, you had the Avengers decide to no longer work for S.H.I.E.L.D., but to also not be stationed at Avengers Island. So now the team has officially moved over to Avengers Mansion. And of course, for Tony Stark, he's the man who's kind of spending all the money the Avengers need to be a functionable team. Now, we do see Iron Man trying his best to show Thor around the new headquarters, but the problem is for Thor, he doesn't care at all. Like, for example, you have Iron Man say, like, here, Thor, look at our great armory. But for Thor, it's all like, a great warrior will always have his weapon next to him the entire time. So why in the world would I place my hammer inside this place right here? I'm a great warrior. My hammer should be with me at all times. Now you have Thor also realize that there's something else going on with Iron Man, and he wants to help Iron Man, but you have Tony tell him, like, listen, not even a god can truly help me out when it comes to my personal problems. Now you do have Pepper appear, and she does tell Tony, like, hey, we gotta leave because we gotta meet up with Happy Hogan. But now we have to switch over to Jasper Sitwell. Now for Jasper Sitwell, he was Tony's liaison because he works for the government. Now for Jasper, he got word that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. And so of course right now, it's Jasper at the moment trying to find the Hulk, trying to find Bruce. Now he also knows Bruce did call up Doc Samson. So Doc Samson might have an idea of where in the world Bruce could be yet. The thing is, the Doc is not trying to tell Jasper where Bruce is at because technically Bruce Banner is his patient. He has the right to protect his patient. But for Jasper, he does not care about protocols or even laws. And so you have Jasper pull out this syringe that's full of gamma radiation. And of course, he injects it into Doc Samson, believing it will make him talk about where Bruce could possibly be at. And so this leads us back over to Tony Stark, who's meeting up with Happy Hogan. Now, when he does, you have Hogan tell Tony, like, okay, so boss, here's the 411. Like, technically, everyone loves the idea of the Avengers. Everyone loves the idea that, you know, the Avengers are here to protect the city. What they don't like right now is still you. Because remember, we learned early on that after Tony Stark's best friend had officially died, he kind of got emotionless, heartless. And so he was doing a lot of things behind the scenes that were kind of heartless, but also kind of allowing different people to run his company. And so unfortunately, there was some bad moves made towards the working class of the public. And so for the working class right now, they don't like Tony for so many different reasons. And so for Happy Hogan, he's informing Tony like, hey, listen, you still have this one particular group of people right now very upset with you. And so for Tony, he wants the chance to meet with those people. So you do have Tony leave the office. Now, right after he does leave, we do learn here that Pepper and also Happy Hogan are technically a couple, so you do see the two characters making out in Tony's office. But this kind of leads into a situation because right after you had Tony leave the office, you have Happy Hogan see somebody coming. And the top floor of Tony's building is completely wiped out, killing off Happy Hogan, and Pepper barely survives. But the entire floor is almost wiped out completely. So you do have Tony see what happened on the ground level, changes into his Iron Man outfit, go up there to figure out what's exactly going on, and you have Iron Man, well, be confronted by another Iron Man person in a different armor suit. Now, we do learn very quickly here that the other Iron Man is actually an old friend of Tony Stark. It's Rebel O'Reilly. Now, remember, in our first video for Iron Man Heroes Reborn Reality, we had talked about the idea that Rebel died. You see, when it came to Rebel, he was testing out the Prometheus armor suit, the original Iron Man suit, but it blew up on him. So we were kind of left to believe he died back then, but somehow he's alive again, but in a different iron suit. So the question is right now, how is he alive? But also, who gave him this other Iron Man suit? And so you do have our two characters fight against one another. Now, for Tony Stark, at first, he does somewhat struggle, but you didn't have Tony begin to rebound in the actual battle to give himself a chance here. But you do have some other pieces being moved around when it comes to this particular storyline. But now we have to jump over to Liz Ross, because remember, Liz works for Tony. She's head of security. And so when it comes to Liz, it's her right now being told by Tony like, hey, go to top level, grab Pepper, get her the heck out of there and get her somewhere protected. But also grab the dead body of Happy Hogan. Now, when Liz arrived with her team, Pepper does not want to leave the dead body of the man she loves behind. But you didn't have Liz go out of her way to slap Pepper. She's like, you know what? You're kind of going crazy and wild. I'm hoping this slap will bring you back into reality to help you realize we got to get the heck out of there. But you didn't have Pepper slap Liz right back. Except when she does, we see that something's going on with the head of Liz Ross. And we're kind of like, wait, what in the world is currently going on with her? But unfortunately, we have to switch over to Jennifer Walters. And here's the reason why, because as she's right now leaving the courthouse and gets into a taxi, you have the Hulk grab Jennifer and bring her straight down into the sewers. And this is the Hulk asking Jennifer to help him out. And so, of course, we get the idea that Bruce is technically still on the run. Now, we do jump back over to Doc Samson, who we believe right now is currently dead. That thanks to Jasper injecting gamma radiation into Doc Samson's body, that he's officially dead. But in reality, Doc Samson's not dead. Matter of fact, he wakes up. We hear a loud scream and a lot of shooting, but we're left to wonder what exactly happened. But getting back over to the battle between Tony and also Rebel, as the battle goes on, you have Tony realize there's something off about Rebel. Now, technically, yes, Tony's right, because Rebel should be dead right now. We watched the man get blown up in the first chapter or the first story arc of this series. But it's Tony saying like, wait, you thought Happy Hogan was me earlier. But here's the thing, you were completely wrong when you blew off the top part of my building. But the thing is, your suit should have told you who it was that you were currently targeting, which means that there's something going on with you. And so you didn't have Tony being able to bring down Rebel, pull off his face mask to reveal like, yes, Rebel is alive, but he's more machine than man. That apparently all these different machine parts have now been plugged into his dead body. The question is right now, who in the world did this to Rebel? Who brought this man back to life? And so as we dive into the next chapter, we do see Tony Stark take Rebel over to Mr. Fantastic, because back in college, it wasn't just Iron Man and Rebel who were best friends. You had Victor, Hank Pym, Reed Richards, and you also had Bruce Banner. They were all friends back in college. Now, for Reed Richards, he definitely knows that Tony Stark is Iron Man, but you have Tony Stark playing with the idea of like, oh, hey, Iron Man is my bodyguard. There's no way I'm Iron Man. But of course, Reed knows that Tony Stark is Iron Man. Now, for Tony, what he wants to do is tap into, well, technically the machine version of Rebel here. Now, you have Reed say, like, if you do that, you are technically connecting both of you guys' life support. If his life support dies, so will yours as well. Meaning that if he dies, Tony, you will also die as well. But for Tony, he wants answers. And so this is him right now going into the memory bank of Rebel to kind of figure out how in the world he was brought back to life. And so once you do have Tony being able to connect his mind to Rebel's mind, it's really more of Tony Stark kind of learning here that even though Rebel and him were best friends in college, for Rebel, he kind of looked at Tony as competition because every single time they went out, the ladies or other people were more interested in Tony rather than Rebel because Tony had the money, Tony had the fame. Tony had the brilliance of being able to do all these different types of things. And so when it came to Rebel over time, he would kind of do things at extreme level to get the attention of other people, but to also make him look better than Tony Stark. And so while you have Tony still connected to the mind of Rebel, he goes into a flashback where you had Tony and Rebel agree to work together to create an armor suit, a combat armor suit to use out there in the field. Of course, this combat armor suit would technically be used to lead into the creation of the Prometheus suit we saw at the very beginning of the series, the first Iron Man armor. Now, while you have the two guys talking to one another, Victor, better known as Dr. Doom, walked over to our two characters and informed them that they're too late, that Russia had already created their own Iron Man person, better known as the Titanium Man. But while you have Tony inside the mind of Rebel, it's also Tony learning that Rebel lost his girlfriend because of Tony, but in a different way. Because again, for Rebel, the only reason why he went more extreme doing different things across the world was to get the attention of other people who were more interested in Tony rather than Rebel. And so because of that, his girlfriend said, like, I need somebody who's not so extreme like you, somebody who's technically more calm, kind of like Tony was. And so even though when he came to Rebel, he changed his entire life to be more extreme, to be better than Tony, he began to lose different things because he's trying to beat Tony so badly. But now we kind of jump forward in time a tad bit here in the mind of Rebel to the night before he had officially died. You see, for Rebel, he took the suit out for his own little test drive, but he flew over to Russia. Why? Because again, Russia had already built their own Iron Man person, Titanium Man. Now, this was a prototype that Tony had built alongside with Rebel. This suit was not technically ready to go over to Russia to fight against all those different missiles, but also to fight against Titanium Man. And so for Rebel, he lost that battle very quickly. And matter of fact, you had Titanium Man tell Rebel this right here. Hey man, listen, I could kill you right now, but I don't want to do that. Instead, I want you to go back over to America to show them their product is not ready. And matter of fact, their product should most likely be shelled and never used ever again, because your whole Iron Man suit is nothing compared to my suit. And this all leads into the death of Rebel, because while he was out there fighting against Titanium Man, it did some serious damage to the suit. And so the following day, when it came time for Rebel to test out the suit in front of Tony and his company people, of course the suit began to malfunction because it was not fully ready, because it got badly damaged thanks to Titanium Man. And so just like that, for Rebel, he died like he did in the first issue of this series. Now, you then had a flashback kind of fast forward to the point where he was dug up. Now, we already know who it is. It's Madam Hydra. But for Tony, he has not met Madam Hydra yet. He has not even seen Hydra yet. So he had no idea who he was looking at. But we do, because we saw Madam Hydra throughout the entire series. Now, you do have Tony be brought back into the present day out of the mind of Rebel. And you have Reed saying like it was probably best to save your life to go ahead and pull you out now. Now, for Rebel, he's going to die very soon. But he said, before I do die, allow me one thing. Allow me to do one thing, to go off like a hero. Okay, so we're kind of getting into the very ending of Heroes Reborn. Like, we still have a few more storylines to cover in Iron Man, Fantastic Four, and Captain America, but we're getting close to the end of Heroes Reborn and watching these heroes go back into the main Marvel universe. Now, in today's video, we're going to sit down and cover 2 more issues of Iron Man and the Heroes Reborn reality, but also kind of wrapping up a storyline from our previous video. And so with that being said, we're covering issues number 10 and also issue number 11. And so this kind of leads into the opening pages of this storyline where we do pick up with Terex the Terrible. Now, here's the thing, he's a herald of Galactus, but when it comes to Terex the Terrible, he's currently chained down by these barbarian creatures. But here's the thing, because he hears his master calling out to him. And matter of fact, we kind of saw this in the Fantastic Four videos where it's Galactus who had decided that it's time for him to go ahead and head over to Earth. And so with Galactus doing that, he's now calling back all his heralds. So the Silver Surfer and also Terex the Terrible. And so now Terex leaves to get ready for the next big thing coming to Earth. And of course, that would be Galactus. Now, we do have to switch over to Tony and also Rebel. Now, remember, when it comes to Rebel, he was a college friend of Tony. Matter of fact, Tony, Dr. Doom, Reed Richards, Hank Pym, Bruce Banner, and also Rebel, they were all college friends back in the day. Now, in the first issue of this series, we saw that Rebel died. Like, he literally got blown up while testing out the brand new Iron Man suit, the prototype actually. Now, with that being said, out of nowhere, he came back to life. But we learned that he's more machine now than man. And the question was, who brought him back to life? Now, we already know who it was. It was Hydra. And so, of course, with him now being defeated by Tony, is him saying like, okay, Tony, you know what? I'm back on your side right now. The thing is, I'm going to die very soon. Before I die, though, I kind of want to go out as a hero. And so currently, you have Rebel taking Tony over to the base that belongs to Hydra. Now, the thing is, while you do have our heroes heading over to the Hydra base, we do learn here the Hydra base is actually over in Russia. And so as soon as our heroes had entered Russia's airspace, they sent out their 2 Iron Soldiers, of course being the Crimson Dynamo and the Titanium Man. Now, for our 2 heroes, this is an easy job for them because their armor suits are a tad bit more advanced, but also because Tony knows how to take them down very quickly. So yes, we do get some classic Iron Man villains here, but they're gone in a matter of like a few seconds. Now, this kind of leads into the birth of She-Hulk in this reality. Now, for me personally, I kind of feel like it's a tad bit rushed. And let me explain, because when it came to She-Hulk in our last video, she was just a regular person. Jennifer was a lawyer. Now, you have Bruce go out of his way to grab her, and the reason why, because he needed her help. And so he grabbed her and took her over to a safe place. Now, we kind of find out it's him, Doc Samson, and also, well, Jennifer. Now remember, in our last video, when it came to Doc Samson, he was given a gamma radiation injection from Jasper Sitwell. Now, when it comes to Jasper Sitwell, he was Tony Stark's government liaison. And so when it came to Jasper, he was trying to find Bruce because he found out that Bruce was the Hulk. The problem was that he knew that Samson knew where Bruce was at. But Samson, being a doctor, said, I'm not going to tell you where my patient is at. And so you had Jasper give Doc Samson that injection. And of course, it turned him into the Abomination in this reality. Here comes the problem. That injection gave him the gamma virus. So Doc Samson is slowly dying, but the same thing goes for Bruce Banner as well. And so to save both their lives, they have to do a blood transfusion. And the reason why, because they believe that each of their blood should cancel out the virus in each of their bodies. The problem is that you have Bruce turn into the Hulk mid-process. And so for Jennifer, she steps in where Bruce left off at to hopefully save Doc Samson's life. And so that gives us the birth of She-Hulk. And so this kind of leads into the ending of this chapter, because you do have Tony Stark and also Rebel being able to get over to Madam Hydra. Now, when they do make her somewhat surrender here, she does not give up that easily. And the reason why, because, well, the Mandarin appears. Now, when he does appear, he kills her off just like that. And this leads into the big battle between the Mandarin and also Tony Stark, but also like it leads into the death of Tony. Because for Tony, while he's battling against the Mandarin, Tony's using way too much energy. And so because of that, you have this huge explosion happen. And we're kind of left to believe that Tony is quote unquote dead, but also we learn here the Mandarin is a robot. And that right there is pretty huge because, like, wait a second, the Mandarin was never real. But we kind of find out who was the person in charge of everything. The Mandarin, Madam Hydra, and also the organization of Hydra. It was Dr. Doom. Because Dr. Doom, what he wanted to do was take over Tony Stark's company. And so as we get into the next chapter, we kind of find out two things here. The first is that when it came to Dr. Doom, we had learned a while ago that when he was supposedly friends with everybody else, he told Rebel and Tony about the idea of Russia already having their own Iron Man suit, of course being the Titanium Man armor suit. We kind of find out he was the guy who gave Russia the blueprint to that outfit, that armor suit. But it's also him kind of bragging about the fact that what he did actually worked. Now his goal is to go after the other members of the round table. So Bruce Banner, Reed Richards, Hank Pym. Now with Tony off the board and, well, technically Rebel's already dead, he believes he's doing a great job. Here's the catch though. We come to find out that Tony's not dead. Apparently him and Rebel have switched armor suit. So in reality, Rebel is dead, but Tony is alive. And so you do have Tony go ahead and change into his Iron Man armor suit. With him doing that, he does surprise attack Dr. Doom. Now, when he does surprise attack Dr. Doom, Doom cannot believe that technically he had failed for that trick, but for Dr. Doom, he still believes that he has the advantage here. The problem is that while you have the two characters fight against one another, it had basically started Dr. Doom's time machine. And so this right here is a callback to an earlier storyline where you had Tony and also Dr. Doom go back in time. Except this time, it will be Tony and Dr. Doom going to different points in time in the main Marvel universe and begin to have our heroes kind of wondering, like, is their reality even real? And you'll see what I mean as we go through the next few sections. And the first point in time they go to is when they had Onslaught attacking New York. Now for Dr. Doom and Tony, for this reality, there was no Onslaught, but in the main Marvel universe, there was one. And so for Tony and also, well, for Dr. Doom, they're kind of wondering, like, wait a second, who is this guy? Did this already happen in the past? What in the world is going on right now? Or are they in an alternate timeline? And so for Dr. Doom and Tony Stark, this brings up a lot of questions. And this continues on for many more sections. They continue to go back in time to the point where they pick up the classic days of the Avengers. Now for Tony Stark, he never wore the Mark I armor suit in this reality. And so for Tony and also Dr. Doom, they're kind of wondering, like, wait a second, what in the world is going on here? Because they see a different Hulk. They see a different Thor. They see a different Iron Man. Now you do have our heroes continue to travel through time. The next point in time is when you had Dr. Doom in the main Marvel universe trick Thing to time travel back in time to become Blackbeard in the age of the pirates. And so for our Dr. Doom and our Tony Stark in the Heroes Reborn reality, when they arrived at that point in time, they're very confused about the fact that why Ben Grimm's right now being Blackbeard at his point in time. Now for Ben Grimm, he does recognize Iron Man, he does recognize Dr. Doom, but it's not his Dr. Doom. It's not his Iron Man. Now, technically it is, but at this point in time, these two characters belong to the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, the next point in time is when you have our two characters arrive in the hourglass that belongs to Merlin. Now, this is a callback again to another classic Marvel storyline that involved Doctor Doom and Tony Stark meeting Merlin in the past. And so for Merlin, he remembers Doctor Doom and Iron Man, but of course in a different type of way. But he tells him, like, the key is time. The problem is that they're once again pulled back into the time stream. And this time for our heroes, they're now meeting Roma Tut. And of course, he knows Doctor Doom. And Doctor Doom kind of knows him as well. So we're kind of getting the idea that these heroes in the Heroes Reborn reality are beginning to remember that they're from a different reality, the main Marvel Universe reality. And their last stop on their time travel adventures is where they pick up with a character known as Airwalker. Now, when it comes to Airwalker, he was a herald for Galactus. What he did was he put a device into the Earth to allow Galactus the ability to, well, consume the Earth down the road. And so for Doctor Doom, he realized what's going to come very soon. Because when they do get back over to the present day, you have Dr. Doom tell Tony that he can leave. And it's kind of like, why in the world did he give up for? Because Dr. Doom now realized that the world is most likely going to end very soon. And so this kind of leads into the ending, because you have Reed and Tony meet up at the funeral for Rebel. When they do meet up, it's Tony and Reed both agreeing on the fact that technically, when it comes to their reality, it's connected to the main Marvel universe. But the thing is, they don't know how. We know how, but they don't know how. But it's also Reed and Tony kind of agreeing on the fact that when it came to Rebel, he did not belong. It was kind of like he was just created in this reality to help connect all the different characters. Hank Pym, Doctor Doom, Reed Richards, Bruce Banner, and of course Tony Stark as well. And they also kind of feel like there has to be some kind of weird connection between all of them besides Rebel. The idea they all got powers in different types of ways. Bruce Banner, the Hulk, Victor, Doctor Doom, Hank Pym, Ant-Man, Iron Man, and also Reed being Mr. Fantastic. Now you do have the Watcher appear. And when the Watcher does appear, he says, listen, Galactus is coming. The Devourer of Worlds approaches. It's a terrible hunger he brings. Now you do have Reed and Tony ask the Watcher, will he help out? He says flat out no, but I am going to watch, because this leads into Heroes Reunite. And that is when you do have Tony and also, well, Iron Man be confronted by She-Hulk, Doc Samson, and also the Hulk, better known as the Hulk Busters. And this leads into the next crossover, better known as Heroes Reunited. And this is where we're going to end the day. Galactus is coming. Like, one more time for y'all. Galactus is on his way to Earth to devour it. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to cover the next big crossover for the Heroes Reborn reality, better known as Heroes Reunited. Now, Heroes Reunited is really more the idea of our heroes coming together because, well, Galactus is coming. And the thing is, in our last few videos that we had covered for the Heroes Reborn reality, we kept seeing the idea of Galactus on his way, like small glimpses here and there, like, okay, he's coming. He's coming again. He'll be there very soon, but now it's time for him to come to Earth. But for our heroes, they kind of ignored all these different hints of the idea of Galactus. But the problem is kind of like, no. You guys now need to get ready because here he comes. And so in today's video, we're going to cover the prologue and also part 1 of Heroes Reunited. And really, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with the Silver Surfer. Now, for the Silver Surfer, let's not forget that he's kind of the reason why our heroes, the Fantastic Four, were able to get their abilities, but also, like, he was captured by Doctor Doom. Now, with them being captured by Doctor Doom and having the Fantastic Four and also Black Panther going out of their way to save his life, it's kind of him feeling bad about the idea of Galactus heading over to their planet. Now, for Galactus, he already sent over his heralds to kind of get the Earth ready for his consumption. But for the Silver Surfer, it's him kind of wondering, how can he save his friends? Or possibly, how can he save the entire planet? And so, even though the other heralds have made their way over to the Earth, it's him saying now, like, okay, I need to get there in a hurry to kind of help them out, because the heralds are really powerful and our heroes don't truly stand a chance against the heralds of Galactus. It's kind of sad to see, because for the Fantastic Four, they're kind of just hanging out and minding their business. Like, for example, Alicia Masters is making a sculpture of Ben Grimm, kind of showing like their relationship has grown a lot. And it's kind of cool to see, but at the same time, you already know by the end of this series, this right here won't technically matter anymore, but we do shift over to Reed and Sue. And for Reed and Sue, it's really important here because it's Susan telling Reed, like, hey, I'm pregnant. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Susan, she was told in this reality that she was not able to have children. But the thing is, she went over to the main Marvel universe and she saw her, original version of herself with a son, Franklin Richards. But once she came back to her supposed reality, is her kind of realizing, like, okay, I want to be a mother. And right now, she's pregnant. Now, you do have Susan go ahead and call up Johnny Storm and say, hey, brother, we're having dinner. We got some big news. But for Johnny Storm, he's kind of in this mindset right now where he's just upset about the idea that they had to leave the Inhumans behind because he's fallen in love with Crystal. And so because of that, you have Johnny right now just in the training room, just going extreme levels to kind of keep his mind off the idea of Crystal. But the problem is, once he does finish his training session, his mind goes straight back over to who? Crystal once again. But now we have to shift our focus back over to Terrax. Now, when it comes to Terrax, it's him right now just arriving on Earth. He's one of the heralds of Galactus, and he was tasked to get the world ready for the consumption of Galactus, which means like take out any possible threats that could take down Galactus, like the Fantastic Four, because the Silver Surfer told Galactus about them. And so for Terrax, he can see like, yeah, y'all got some cosmic powers in y'all, but like, hey, it doesn't matter. You still gotta go. And so you do have our heroes try their best to fight against this powerful being who's not really easy to take down. And it kind of shows here because, yeah, for Susan Storm, she is able to put a force field around her to protect herself. But the problem is, like, for Terrax, this man knows what to do. And so he shakes the ground underneath her as a way to attack her. And so just like that, he's showing that no matter what, he has different ways to attack people. Now, when it comes to Reed, of course, he gets very upset about the idea of his girlfriend being attacked at the moment, especially now because she's pregnant. But the problem is, Reed's not powerful enough to take on a guy like Terrax by himself. So, of course, he's also taken out very easily. Now, when it comes to Susan, she tries her best to call up her brother, the Human Torch, who's back at the Baxter building. The problem is that for Johnny, he is not looking at his communicator. Why? Because again, he's still madly in love with Crystal. He missed Crystal so much that he keeps looking at pictures of her. And while you have everything popping off over there for Galactus, this man is truthfully on his way over to the Earth. And so for Galactus, while being in his spacecraft, he looks over data about the Earth. And for this guy, he's getting really hyped about the idea of consuming the Earth because he realized there is a lot of life energy there. And so for him, he's kind of like, this is perfect. All that life energy for myself is pretty great. But as we do switch back over to Johnny Storm, it's him realizing that things have truthfully popped off back at the park with the rest of the Fantastic Four. So you do have Johnny head over there to kind of help them out. Except when he does arrive, you have him and Ben being able to work together to take down Terrax. Now, right after you have our two heroes being able to, take down Terrax for the time being, you then have the two go look for Reed and Susan. Now, they do find Reed. When they find Reed, they are then informed about the idea that Susan is pregnant. So, of course, everyone is excited, but here comes the big problem, though, because yes, they did defeat Terrax. But like I said earlier, the rest of the Heralds of Galactus were also sent over to the Earth, which means here comes Firelord and also Plasma, two other Heralds of Galactus. And of course, for our heroes, it took a lot for them to just take down Terrax. But now they gotta fight against two more Heralds of Galactus. And this leads into Heroes Reunited Part 1. And so as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we do pick up with Dr. Doom. Now, this is Dr. Doom arriving at New York City, arriving at the Laverian Embassy. And the reason why, because inside this place, he had his robots work on a brand new armor suit. Now, this armor suit will allow him the ability to siphon off the energy of somebody who has cosmic powers. Like, I don't know, Terrax, or Plasma, or Firelord, or hey, maybe Galactus. But it's Dr. Doom saying like he believes it's officially ready. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Dr. Doom, he was confronted by a future version of himself that tried to warn him about their future and handed him a card that held information about their future. But for Dr. Doom, he took that card and added it into his armor suit. But now we're kind of able to switch over to the Fantastic Four, as you do have the Human Torch in the Thing wanting to fight against the Heralds of Galactus. Now, of course, this is a bad idea because it took the entire team to defeat just one of the Heralds of Galactus. But now you're talking about three of them. Now, for Reed, he tries his best to kind of talk everything out. But with the idea of Terrax being a hothead character and also Ben Grimm as well, of course, it does lead into a battle. But like I said, these guys are Heralds of Galactus, so technically our heroes do not even stand a chance against these guys. But luckily for our heroes, you do have the Silver Surfer arrive at the very last second. And this is really more of the Silver Surfer kind of telling us, the readers, but also the other Heralds of Galactus, that he looks at the Fantastic Four as not just heroes or just powerful beings, but also as his friends. Now, you do have Terrax kind of confused about the idea of the Silver Surfer kind of not really doing what their master had asked him to do. But you didn't have Galactus call back his heralds, and you have all four of them leave just like that. But right after you have the Heralds of Galactus leave, you then have our heroes be called up by S.H.I.E.L.D. And so you have our heroes head over to the helicarrier. Now, this begins the process of the actual crossover. So the Fantastic Four are being confronted by Nick Fury and also the Avengers. And so you do have Nick Fury say like, hey guys, listen, this room right here, it handles space problems. And we kind of find out that you had S.H.I.E.L.D. detected the spacecraft that Galactus used as a way to travel across the universe. And apparently he had just passed the moon. He's right outside the Earth space at the moment. And so you had Nick go ahead and sent out these probes to kind of get a good idea of what they're looking at. Now, most of their probes do get destroyed, except for one. And so it's now our heroes getting their first look at the spacecraft that belongs to Galactus. Now, on the actual spacecraft, we do pick up with the Heralds of Galactus meeting up with, well, Galactus. And this is Galactus saying that he feels like it's officially time to begin the process of consuming the Earth. Now, for the Silver Surfer, he wants to have a conversation with Galactus, possibly convince him to leave Earth alone. But again, earlier we saw that for Galactus, the Earth right now is holding a lot of energy that he would love to consume. And so, unfortunately, he tells Surfer, no, let's go ahead and move on with our plans. But getting back over to our heroes, is our heroes right now listening to Reed Richard, because for Reed, he's kind of telling the heroes what he realized throughout the entire series. The whole idea of all these things being connected: the Silver Surfer, Galactus, the Skrulls, the Inhumans, Mole Man. In some crazy way, all these different things are connected to one another. And so for Reed, as he goes on with his speech, that is when S.H.I.E.L.D. is then informed about some kind of new device that Galactus had just released. Now, this device is breaking apart into multiple components that will travel across the Earth. And so for our heroes, what they want to do is go to those different locations and try their best to get rid of those components. Now, for Reed, he'll stay behind. And the reason why, because he's going to try his best to create a device that should possibly help our heroes win against Galactus. So this leads into the first team to go after the first component that did crash land in the Himalayas by Firelord putting it there. Now, the first team is the Human Torch and the Inhumans. Now, this makes a lot of sense. And the reason why, because as we all know, for Johnny Storm, he's madly in love with Crystal, but also he wants to help out the Inhumans. Now, here's the thing, because Firelord is actually a very strong opponent. And even though you do have the Human Torch there, when it comes to Firelord, his powers are completely different from the Human Torch. So unfortunately for Johnny, he's not really able to do anything to Firelord, but Firelord can. Now, you do have Firelord kind of tell us that the humans should not be trying to attack him because he is a herald of Galactus. And let's not forget, when it came to the Inhumans, they looked at Galactus and his heralds as pantheons, as gods. And so you have Firelord say like, hey, you can't attack me because, as you all know, once the Earth is consumed, your energy, your souls will go into your great god, better known as Galactus. And so now the question is, do the Inhumans attack Firelord to save the Earth or not do anything because of their culture? But you have Black Bolt choose the idea of saving the planet. And so for Black Bolt, he does attack the component that Firelord had placed down. Now, here's the problem though, because this component is storing a lot of energy. So with the idea of our heroes trying to get rid of it, of course, it begins to blow up. And so we're kind of left to believe of the idea that, well, the Inhumans plus the Human Torch had just died. Now, the second team will be the Avengers, and they went over to Monster Island. And the reason why, because Plasma, the other herald of Galactus, well, she had placed her component right on Monster Island. So you do have our heroes arrive there and try their best to get rid of it. The problem is, it's our heroes fighting against Plasma, but also fighting against Mole Man, because Monster Island is Mole Man's home. Now, while you do have our heroes being able to fight against both Plasma and also Mole Man, the component has been activated. And so you have Namor go ahead and say, you know what? Let me sacrifice my life as a way to save the world. And so you have Namor take the component into the depths of a trench nearby, hoping the water pressure will be strong enough to just go ahead and destroy the component, but also making sure the explosion does not hit our heroes nor Monster Island. Now, for the surviving heroes, they do go back over to New York, except when they do, they're now seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to fight against Galactus, which honestly is a bad idea, but they're trying. And you have Nick trying to use the helicarrier as a way to attack Galactus with all the weapons on the helicarrier. But you have Galactus take one shot, and just like that, the helicarrier is now about to blow up. And the reason why? Because of the reactor core. And so you have Nick tell all of his agents to get the heck out of there. Because for Nick, what he's going to do now is pilot the helicarrier over to Galactus, hoping that when the reactor core blows up, it might do some serious damage to Galactus or possibly stop him, but also his devices as well. And so for our heroes, unfortunately, they have to watch Nick Fury give up his life to hopefully save the world. And so just like that, there is an explosion. Except for Nick Fury, his plan does not work at all because you have Galactus survive the explosion, but you didn't have Galactus use the metal on the different skyscrapers around him to repair the damage done to his devices that Nick Fury had tried to blow up. So technically, Nick's plan had completely failed. And so for our heroes, they're kind of like, okay, we got to retreat right now because technically we're losing this battle. We got to find a way to stop this guy. And so this kind of leads into our heroes having a meeting, right? Now, when our heroes do have this meeting, it's really more of Reed trying to re-explain everything to us again. Like, hey, those components out there, they are technically being used as a way to kind of get the Earth ready for Galactus to consume. Now, once you do have our heroes learn that lesson right there, we also learn here that for Reed, he had created this device that should allow our heroes to fight against the cosmic beings, like nullify their cosmic attacks. Now, you do have Ben Grimm go ahead and put on the device, but while you do have our heroes talking to one another, two things happen. The first is that you have Susan find out that Johnny is dead. But now our heroes are once again attacked by Terrax. Now for our heroes, they're really able to take care of Terrax very easily now, thanks to Ben Grimm's device. Sorry, Reed Richards' device, not Ben Grimm's device. But with Terrax being handled, you then have our heroes shift their focus onto taking out the main device that Galactus is currently using. The problem is that all their different weapons are not really working when it comes to trying to get rid of it. Now, the last few pages of the storyline, man, it's really rough for our heroes because you have Ben Grimm say, you know what, let me go ahead and use the device that Reed gave me and absorb the energy of Galactus. The problem is that you have Galactus go ahead and take all the energy that Ben Grimm had absorbed from Terrax, but also Ben Grimm's cosmic energy as well, turning him back into a regular human, but also knocking him out and Thor out as well. Just like that in a matter of seconds. That's not even the rough part. The rough part is that you have Black Panther and also Ben Grimm be killed off by Terrax in a matter of seconds. Now things get even worse because you didn't have Terrax say like, oh, humans, you're wrong. You see, you thought there were only 3 components that were placed across the Earth. There was a 4th one. There is another Herald of Galactus, and that would be Airwalker. Now you do have Terrax say, you know what, it's now time for me to kill off the rest of the heroes. But you do have the Silver Surfer try to step in and stop Terrax. And this leads into the final moments of this storyline, the final moments of the Earth. Yes, you heard that right, because when it comes to our heroes, they're trying to regroup, but you didn't have Dr. Doom arrive. Now for Dr. Doom, he's still trying his best to absorb the energy of somewhat cosmic powers. So of course, he goes over to Galactus, and Galactus sends him flying the other direction in like a matter of seconds. The problem is that it distracted Reed long enough to allow Galactus the ability to turn on his machine. And so just like that, the entire Earth was just consumed by Galactus. Now, at the very last second, you have Dr. Doom go back in time. But the book ends on that note. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into more Heroes Reunited. And we do pick up with part 2. Now, guys, just in case you're kind of wondering, like, why in the world I'm doing like 4 different videos for Heroes Reunited, is because each issue is like 40 to 45 pages long. So it's pretty long enough for us to do a video for each one of these. But also kind of gives me a small break when it comes to recording all these different storylines that I do in a short period of time. But anyways, getting back into Heroes Reborn Part 2. As you all know, at the ending of Part 1, we saw that Galactus was able to destroy the Earth. Like, he consumed it. So it's kind of like the heroes are officially dead, right? But now we have to dive into Avengers issue number 12, part 2 of the storyline. And matter of fact, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up in the past. We pick up the Avengers right now giving the fake Thor a funeral. As you all know, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it was our heroes in the main Marvel universe transported into a brand new reality, but reborn in that brand new reality, except for Thor. For some strange reason, most likely because he's a god, when it came to Thor, he was not reborn in the Heroes Reborn reality. There was a fake Thor at first, and so we were kind of left to believe it was our original Thor, but it wasn't. And then out of nowhere, our Thor appeared in this reality. Now, the fake Thor died in a big battle against Loki. So right now, it's our hero saying goodbye to the fake Thor for once and for all. But right after you have our heroes get done with the funeral, well, that is when you have Nick Fury get a call from one of his agents. Now, this guy is warning the Avengers, warning Nick like, hey, Galactus is coming. His heralds, they're killers. And matter of fact, they trashed my warp drive. Like, I'm gonna die as soon as I arrive back on Earth. But I want to tell you right now, y'all gotta get ready for Galactus. But the thing is, right after that message, that agent, his spacecraft, it flies right through the helicarrier into the Earth. Now, of course, the helicarrier did survive, but now as our heroes kind of wondering like, what the heck is Galactus? Because right now, this storyline is in the past. But right after that, you did have our heroes be confronted by Doctor Doom. Now, this is Doctor Doom from the future, from part 1. Because remember, at the end of part 1, Galactus was able to consume the Earth. But Doctor Doom was able to time travel back in time. And so now all we're seeing is Doctor Doom trying to warn the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, what's about to come. Here comes Galactus. He says, listen, what you have to do is get all types of missiles ready and use those missiles to hopefully kill off the Heralds. But also the Heralds, they're bringing devices to plant into the Earth. You must go out of your way to destroy the devices before they're able to be planted into the actual Earth. And then you have Doctor Doom leave. Now, for our heroes, they believe Doctor Doom, but mainly because, well, one of Nick's S.H.I.E.L.D. agents just crashed back on Earth and said Galactus is on his way. And so because of that, bam, Nick is on the game. Now for Doctor Doom, he knows the Heralds have to go. They're really powerful. And so for Doctor Doom, what he's going to do is use missiles as a way to kill off the Heralds. He also knows the Avengers are the Fantastic Four. They will try their best to fight against the Heralds. And so for Doctor Doom, what he wants to do is use the missiles to kill off the Heralds, and most likely it'll kill off the heroes as well. And honestly, for Doctor Doom, that'll be okay. And the reason why, because then everyone will be out of his way to allow him to rule over the Earth. And for Nick Fury, this man is already on the game plan when it comes to figuring out how to stop Galactus. He says, hey guys, listen, we got 3 locations where the Heralds might appear with their devices. And so what he did was, he already called up 3 different teams to handle these problems. The Fantastic Four, they're going to one location. The Avengers, a different location. The Hulk, the 3rd location. Now the Wasp and also Hank Pym, they stay behind because for Hank Pym, he has to show Wanda something very important. And that would be the Vision. And we do learn here that this is a new body that Hank Pym had created for the Vision. But also, when it came to Hank Pym, when he was inside the body of the Vision in the earlier storyline, you had Hank pull out a special chip. That special chip held all the memories of the Vision in that one single chip. So of course, when you have Hank plug that chip in the new body of the Vision, he remembers everything from the past. So now our heroes have another Avenger on their side to help out with this situation. But now we have to switch over to the Fantastic Four. Now, when they arrive at Moscow, they find the first Herald of Galactus. And of course, it would be the Silver Surfer, who's right now trying to plant the device into the Earth. Here's the thing, because for our heroes, they say the Silver Surfer in a previous storyline. But also, let's not forget, in the last chapter, when it came to the Silver Surfer, he had a change of heart when it came to the idea of Galactus trying to consume the Earth. But in this chapter, he's kind of like, hey, listen, I gotta do what my master tells me to do, which means if I have to fight against you guys, I will fight against you guys to allow Galactus to consume your planet. But let's not forget that Doctor Doom is watching this battle. And so for Doctor Doom, he's kind of like, cool, this is perfect because now I'm going to use some of my missiles to hopefully get rid of the Silver Surfer, but also his device. But at the same time, I can kill off the Fantastic Four all in one single blow. But getting back over to the battle with our heroes, they're still fighting against the Silver Surfer. But here's the thing, because you do have Reed Richards. Man, this dude got a plan like always. You see, for Reed, he brought this device that allows him the ability to absorb energy and then give that energy over to somebody else. Like, for example, cosmic energy. He absorbed the energy of the Silver Surfer and gave that energy over to Johnny Storm, making Johnny even stronger than he was earlier, but allowing Johnny the ability to go ahead and get rid of the device that was planted by the Silver Surfer. Now, here's the thing, because even though our heroes are now believing the idea that they have begun the process of saving the Earth, you have Reed and the Silver Surfer realize what's about to happen. The missiles are about to drop. The ones that Dr. Doom had fired. And for Susan, she's too weak right now to even try to put up a force field. And so just like that, that entire area got blown up. The Fantastic Four are dead. Now, the Silver Surfer survived. And Dr. Doom, he realized that his plan did not work on that one Herald right there. Now we do switch over to the Hulk because the Hulk's right now on his way over to one of the 3 locations out there. Now for the Hulk, he does get some backup. That will be the Vision and also the Scarlet Witch as well. Now we had to switch over to LA, and the reason why, because you have S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting against the 3rd Herald, and that would be Plasma. Now for Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., they're trying their best to do whatever they can to stop her, but the problem is that she's just too strong. And matter of fact, Nick gets hit by one of her attacks, and so it does seem like he's going to die. And so just like in the last chapter, you have Nick take the helicarrier and crash it right into Plasma. And the reason why, because the reactor core in the helicarrier is strong enough to, well, kill her off. And so just like that, there goes Plasma off the board. Now, as we do switch over to the 3rd location, the Hulk again, and also Vision, you have the 2 characters fighting against Firelord. Now, technically, Firelord is really able to take the Hulk on, but it's the whole idea of the Hulk and Vision working together to kind of keep Firelord distracted long enough to allow the Vision to grab Firelord's staff and use the staff cosmic power as a way to get rid of the 3rd device. And so just like that, you have our heroes being able to win this battle, it seems like. But once you have the Hulk turn back into Bruce Banner, we get the idea that Firelord attack did some serious damage to the Hulk, and Bruce is on the verge of death. But it's also Bruce realizing that what the heroes are trying to do right now is not going to allow them to win the battle against Galactus, really. But now we have to switch over to the Avengers. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing the Avengers fighting against Terrax. Now, for Terrax, he kills off Hawkeye very quick and easy. And I feel kind of bad because I am a Hawkeye fan, but at the same time, like, it's Hawkeye going up against Terrax. Like, it's not a fair battle at all. But either way, you do have the rest of the Avengers trying their best to get rid of Terrax, but also a device that he brought with him as well. Now, for Wasp, she also dies in the middle of the battle as well. And Thor does get hurt by Terrax pretty badly as well too. But you have Thor use his hammer to send Terrax right into the actual device, blowing it up, killing off Terrax. But also, again, it's our heroes believing that they are beginning the process of saving the world against Galactus. Now, for the Silver Surfer, he watched Plasma die, but he also watched Terrax die as well. Now, for Doctor Doom, he wanted to use another set of missiles, but the problem is that those missiles came from Russia. And the problem is that those missiles that he tried to use, they didn't shoot off correctly. They blew up while still being docked. And so, unfortunately, half of Russia just got blown up just like that. Now, when Galactus does arrive into New York City, he's confronted by what's technically left of the Avengers, Thor, Iron Man, and good old Captain America. But the problem is that you have our heroes find out that there is another Herald, and that will be Airwalker. But on top of that as well, when it comes to this Herald, he has another device. And matter of fact, more devices are being planted across the world to begin the process of allowing Galactus to consume the Earth. And for the Avengers, they got blasted pretty hard by Airwalker. So unfortunately, they have to retreat back over to Avengers Mansion. Now, once you do have the Avengers get back over to Avengers Mansion, they're then confronted by Vision, Scarlet Witch, Bruce Banner, Hank Pym, and Doctor Doom. Now, for Bruce Banner, the man got a plan. He said, hey, listen, we can't stop Galactus. The Earth is going to die, but let's go out with a bang. Let's go ahead and get rid of Galactus as well. And so what Bruce is saying is use the Gamma Core over at Avengers Island. Because remember, in an earlier storyline, when it came to the Gamma Core, it was kind of like this hole in space and time, pulling in different characters from different realities or different points in time. And so for our heroes, they believe if they go out of their way to destroy the Gamma Core, it should kill off the Earth, but also kill off Galactus as well. Now, for Doctor Doom, he does not go with them at all because the Doctor Doom, what they're trying to do is completely crazy. And so for Doctor Doom, he leaves to once again try to time travel. Now, for the heroes, they go over to Avengers Island, except when they do arrive at Avengers Island, you have our heroes go over to the Gamma Core. When they do, they're then confronted by the Silver Surfer. Now, for our heroes, they're kind of confused right now because they know that this man is a herald of Galactus, but it's him saying like, I've been watching you guys and I realized something, that I learned something from you guys. The idea of compassion, the idea of hope, the sorrow. Like I learned that basically this is completely wrong. And now I want to help you guys to save not this world because this world is going to die, but at least stop Galactus to save other worlds out there in the universe. And so you had a Surfer being able to heal up Thor. Once he does that, you have our heroes attack all together, and that destroys the Gamma Core, ripping a hole in space and time. With that happening, of course, that means the Earth is gone just like that. Galactus gone just like that. Once again, the Earth has been destroyed in this storyline. The only thing left out there floating is Thor's hammer. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Heroes Reunited, we do pick up with Part 3. And Part 3 takes place in Iron Man issue number 12 in the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, just in case you're kind of like getting into our coverage over Heroes Reunited, it's a whole storyline that took place in the Heroes Reborn reality. You know, the reality where in late 1990s, you had a few characters that were no longer selling books. And so when it came to Marvel Comics, they pushed those characters into a brand new reality to kind of give them a fresh start over. There were some old creators that were still popular in the 1990s, kind of hoping it would bring life back into those characters. And so when it came to Heroes Reborn, every like sixth issue, they would have a crossover. And this was the second one, better known as Heroes Reunited, where Galactus is trying to consume the Earth. And every single time the heroes try their best to stop Galactus, they fail. But every single time they do fail, it's Doctor Doom going back in time with what he learned to hopefully figure out like how can they save the world? How can they stop Galactus? And matter of fact, when it came to our first video over Heroes Reunited, it was Dr. Doom being confronted by a future version of himself. And that right there kicked off what to me calls a time loop. Like, it's just Dr. Doom constantly going back in time over and over again until he is able to find a way to stop Galactus. Now, for me personally, I kind of like this chapter a tad bit, and the reason why, because it brings in characters we did not see in the first two chapters, and that would be She-Hulk and Doc Samson, because in our last Iron Man video, you had Tony and Reed be confronted by the Hulkbusters, because in our last video, we had talked about the idea that our three Hulk characters are somewhat being affected by the gamma virus in their bodies. And so when it came to Bruce and Doc Samson, they kind of believe a blood transfusion could possibly help them, but Bruce turned to Hulk, so he began to freak out. You had She-Hulk step in. Of course, that led to her becoming the She-Hulk in this reality. Either way, for these three characters, they're right now the Hulkbusters in the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, this kind of brings up a conversation for Reed and Tony. Because for Reed and Tony, they kind of realize there's something off about this reality. And for me personally, this is a callback to our earlier videos where you had Reed and Tony kind of being able to get small glimpses of the main Marvel universe, but not getting the idea that they're from that universe, but they were pushed into a different reality. And so for Reed and Tony, they have been trying their best to figure out what's going on with their reality, because again, they all got powers. And it's really weird how one particular friend group is able to get powers, every single member of that friend group. But you did have our heroes be alerted about Galactus and his heralds coming to, well, the planet Earth. Now, when it comes to Tony, in our last video, him and Dr. Doom, they had time traveled. And while time traveling, they saw the spacecraft. And so for Tony, he definitely knows about that spacecraft. He definitely knows there's something special about it. But you do have Reed Richards be the first one to try to make contact with the Heralds of Galactus. And he tells Tony in the Hulkbusters, like, you guys are technically the backup team. Like, if things pop off, y'all come in then. Now, when it comes to Tony, one of the things I do want to point out that in the first issue of this series, we had technically learned that he was heartless, that he was emotionless. And the reason why, because, well, he watched one of his close friends die while testing out an armor that him and his best friend had created. But over time, with him being Iron Man, he has turned into this person who can show that he does have emotions, that he does have a heart. And so for Doc Samson, he's kind of happy about the idea of seeing Tony like that. But you didn't have Tony get a call about something else. So of course he has to leave. Now for the Hulkbusters, they believe it's actual business, but in reality it's something, well, personal. Because in the earlier video, we had saw that Happy Hogan got like seriously injured. Now, in an earlier video, I kind of had mentioned that Happy Hogan had died, but that's not the actual case there. You see, Happy Hogan survived. And the thing was, in the artwork in that last video I recorded, I really thought Happy Hogan died, but that's my fault. But in reality, he did survive. So it's Tony right now, seeing how Happy is at the hospital. But while you have Tony, Pepper, and Happy just hanging out at the hospital, you have Dr. Doom arrive. Now, when Dr. Doom does arrive, this is Dr. Doom once again trying to save the world by going back in time with the information that he remembers from his last few attempts. And so it's him saying, okay, you know what, Tony, we gotta go. He grabs Tony and they leave. And he makes sure to grab Tony's Iron Man suit as well. Now we do switch over to the Hulkbusters, and they're watching the Fantastic Four fight against the Heralds of Galactus. Now while they're doing that, I kind of find this a tad bit funny, and the reason why, because in the earlier chapters of the storyline, we saw the Heralds of Galactus take on teams of heroes by themselves, and to see Fantastic Four go one-on-one with these guys is pretty wild to me. I feel like they should be dead by now. But either way, we switch over to Bruce Banner, who's being confronted by Liz. Now, Liz was head of security for Tony Stark's company, but the thing is, when it came to Bruce Banner getting hit with gamma radiation, turning him into, well, the Hulk, for her, it gave her radiation poisoning. She's dying. And so it's her saying goodbye to Bruce Banner. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom and Tony Stark, they're having this conversation where it's Doctor Doom wanting Tony Stark to understand about what happened in the last video we covered. The whole idea of the two characters going throughout time, but in the main Marvel universe. And so it's Doctor Doom saying, like, Tony, you have to realize something, that there's something off about us, about this reality. But it's also Doctor Doom beginning to remember his original past over from the main Marvel universe. Because it's Doctor Doom saying, think back to a year ago. But for him, a year ago was the Onslaught crossover. The whole idea of our heroes fighting against Onslaught and our heroes going into him and being transported over to the Heroes Reborn reality. Now for Tony Stark, he can't believe what he's hearing from Doctor Doom, but it's Doctor Doom saying, like, no, when it came to Onslaught, you grabbed me and pulled me into him, into this reality. It's Doctor Doom beginning to remember. But unfortunately, their conversation ends because you have Nick Fury say, hey guys, listen, I need all hands on deck. So y'all guys are coming over to the helicarrier. And this is more of Nick Fury telling the Avengers, like, hey, listen, so the Fantastic Four, they're dead. Like, they died fighting against the Heralds of Galactus. So, like, it's up to y'all to fight against them, but to also fight against their boss Galactus when he arrives. Now, once you have Doctor Doom hears that Reed Richards had died again, that's now twice that Reed Richards had died. It's Doctor Doom saying, like, okay, so, like, I need to work with the Avengers, work with my old colleagues from college like Hank Pym and Tony Stark to find a way to hopefully defeat Galactus and save this world. And so it's now our heroes beginning to move out with their plan. You have all the hard hitters fight against the Heralds of Galactus, while you have all the smart ones stay behind to hopefully make something to save the world. Now, the next few pages for me kind of shows the timeline being changed, because in this timeline, you have our heroes being able to take on the Heralds of Galactus and being able to kill them off. But this time, because they worked as a team, unlike the Fantastic Four, who did one-on-one battles. And so you do have our heroes being able to kill off the different Heralds of Galactus. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline, right? Where we get to that point where it's the heroes using a device that was created by Tony, Hank, Bruce, and also Victor, the ultimate nullifier. And they're kind of hoping it will work against Galactus. The problem is you have Galactus just go ahead and get rid of that device in a matter of seconds. So just like that, our heroes had failed. And so with our heroes failing, it's Doctor Doom realizing he has to go back in time once again to hopefully find a way to stop Galactus. And this leads into the final chapter of Heroes Reunited, which is part 4, Captain America issue number 12. With that being said, guys, see you on the next comic book video. Later. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Heroes Reunited. And with that being said, we do pick up the final chapter of this crossover that took place in Captain America issue number 12. Now remember, this storyline does take place over in the Heroes Reborn reality for Marvel Comics. Now, as we all know, that came out of the whole idea of Onslaught, where you had our heroes go into Onslaught but be transported into a different reality, because in the late 1990s, some properties of Marvel Comics were no longer selling. And so they had a great idea to push those characters away in a different reality and give old creators a chance to kind of give those characters a fresh start in a brand new reality, and hoping that it would bring fans back into Marvel Comics for those characters like Iron Man, the Avengers, and Fantastic Four. Anyway, so Heroes Reunited, it's really more about the idea of our heroes trying the best to defeat Galactus. And technically, it's really more about Doctor Doom trying his best to defeat Galactus. And let me explain. You see, when it came to the very beginning of Heroes Reunited, you had Galactus arrive to Earth. When he did, things popped off very quickly, but the Earth was consumed by Galactus. What you've been seen in the earlier chapters is Doctor Doom going back in time every single time he failed to stop Galactus. So now, this is his fourth and final attempt. And the reason why it's his fourth and final attempt, because at the end of the last chapter for Doctor Doom, his device that allows him to time travel got damaged. So unfortunately for Doom, he has to get it right here to basically stop Galactus, but to save the world. And so as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we really do pick up with Rebecca Barnes. Now, Rebecca Barnes is the Bucky of this reality, the Bucky of the 1990s for this reality. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to Rebecca Barnes, there's so much about this character that comes out later on in later books down the road when it comes to Marvel Comics. So like, she's a very intriguing character for the overall idea of Heroes Reborn. And you see what I mean if we ever come back to this reality. But for Rebecca Barnes, when she does get home, she's confronted by Doctor Doom. Now, for me personally, I would freak out as well. But the reason why you have Doctor Doom there for, you see, for Doctor Doom, he was able to access the SHIELD files. And with him doing that, he learned that Rebecca is technically a chronal anomaly. She should not exist at all. And that right there continues the whole idea that Doctor Doom is slowly realizing that there's something off about this reality. The possibility that this reality should not even exist at all. And that right there is pretty important. But either way, for Doctor Doom, he feels like he should go ahead and just kill her off, because again, she should not even exist at all when it comes to this reality. But you did have Steve Rogers appear. Now, when Steve Rogers does appear, you have both characters just stop in their track. It is not like Doctor Doom and Steve are going to fight. And it's not like Doctor Doom is scared of Steve Rogers. It's more of like, for me personally, it's Doctor Doom remembering that what he's here for. Like, the dude traveled back in time to find a way to stop Galactus. So why should he waste time on Rebecca Barnes when technically he should be focused on finding a way to defeat Galactus? So it's him saying like, you know what? Let me go ahead and get the heroes together to fight against Galactus. Now, here's the thing, because for Doctor Doom, he also drops the hint for Steve Rogers that he is somehow connected to SHIELD. Now, we did learn in the earlier chapters that when it comes to SHIELD, they do work with Tony Stark, but they also work with Doctor Doom as well. And so you then have Doctor Doom begin the process of trying to bring together the heroes of this reality. And the thing is, it's Doctor Doom also realizing that he needs Reed Richards. And for me personally, that is pretty big for Doctor Doom, because for Doom, he realized he needs the help of other scientists like Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards, Hank Pym, to find a way to defeat Galactus. But here's the thing though, because in the earlier chapters, we always saw Fantastic Four die first. And so when it comes to Doctor Doom, he knows that the Heralds of Galactus will fight against Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four will die, and that will hurt their chances to finding a way to defeat Galactus. So you had Doom get the Avengers, they go out there, protect the Fantastic Four, defeat the Heralds of Galactus, and now you have our heroes being able to begin the process of working together to find a way to stop Galactus. Now, for Galactus, he knows that his heralds have basically failed on Earth. Now, when it comes to Galactus, he has 5 heralds, so only 4 of them have failed. Terrax, Firelord, Plasma, and Airwalker. But the Silver Surfer is still around. And the thing is, he's hoping the Silver Surfer will still be able to finish the job, to get the Earth ready for Galactus to consume. Now, for the Silver Surfer, we saw in earlier videos that he kind of hates the idea of Earth being consumed by Galactus because the Fantastic Four has saved him. And so he's beginning to grow when it comes to having emotions. But either way, you do have Galactus order Surfer to go get the Earth ready for consumption. But now we have to shift over to the Knights of the Atomic Round Table. Now, that name was given to that group back in college. And really, everyone involved in that group were basically scientists in some types of ways. Like, for example, you've got Tony Stark, you got Hank Pym, Dr. Doom, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards. There was one more character known as Rebel, but he officially died by this point in the Heroes Reborn reality. But all of these characters met back in college, and now it's all of them coming together to figure out how to get rid of Galactus. And the thing is, Bruce Banner has an idea. He's kind of like, hey, let's give Galactus exactly what he wants. And you have everyone freak out like, whoa, what in the world did Bruce Banner just say right now? But now we have to shift back over to Rebecca Barnes. Now, for Rebecca Barnes, it's really more of her at Avengers Mansion alongside with the other heroes. But on her mind at the moment is the whole idea of what Dr. Doom had told her. Like, hey, you should not exist. And so for Rebecca, she wants to know, what does that truly mean? Like, is there a possibility that she should not be around at all when it comes to being in this reality? But you didn't have her be confronted by the Silver Surfer. Now, for the Silver Surfer, even though he's still working for Galactus, he still wants to find a way to help out the humans. And so you had the Silver Surfer tell Rebecca, hey, listen, I have a message. And you need to get this message over to the heroes that Galactus is coming. And when he does arrive, your Earth is going to be consumed. And I'm telling y'all this right now so that you may be able to use your science to find a way off this planet, to take a few people somewhere else, to restart humanity somewhere else. Now, of course, Rebecca, she believes in the heroes. They're going to find a way to stop Galactus, to save this Earth. But for the Silver Surfer, he only came here to give her a message to give over to the other heroes. Now, while he does try to leave, you have her grab onto his board. Now, Steve Rogers sees that she has, of course, grabbed onto the Silver Surfer's board. And this leads into a very sad moment because while you do have Rebecca holding on to the surfer board, you didn't have Galactus appear. When he does appear, you have Galactus hit her with some kind of cosmic energy, having her fall into a body of water. Now, luckily, Steve was around, but for the Silver Surfer, he's kind of like, what did I do? Like, what have my actions brought? Like, if I only came here and did the job that Galactus had asked me to do, there's a possibility that little girl would not got hit by my master's cosmic blast. So you didn't have Steve Rogers bring her back over to Avengers Mansion. Now, with him doing that, of course, you have all the Avengers, all the heroes seeing what happened to her. And of course, that motivates them even more to find a way to bring down Galactus. Now, right after that, you didn't have the heroes get one more person on their side, and that would be the Silver Surfer. He's no longer working for Galactus. He will now help the heroes to find a way to bring down his old master. And so you have our heroes give the Silver Surfer the ultimate nullifier. Now, here's the thing, because if anybody ever used this device, you're going to die. It's a major sacrifice that technically has to be done as a way to get rid of Galactus. And so for the Silver Surfer, he agrees to be the one to sacrifice his life to save this planet. And so with the ultimate nullifier, what it's going to do is absorb the energy of our heroes, but also the energy of Galactus, and then continue to feed Galactus until technically he overloads. And so that is their actual plan to defeat Galactus once and for all. And it does really work out for our heroes where Galactus is truly defeated. Now, with Galactus being gone, you didn't have our heroes go their separate ways, right? Now, for Reed Richards, is him kind of hoping that Doctor Doom will go ahead and switch sides. Like Doctor Doom will try to reopen the doors that he had locked away in his heart and allow the different people that he made friends with back in college be back in his life once again. But of course, for Doctor Doom, he can't do that. But to go ahead and get into the ending of the storyline, we do switch over to Steve Rogers, right? And so for Steve Rogers, he's currently at the grave at Abraham Wilson. Now, Abraham Wilson was the father to Sam Wilson, who died trying to give Steve back his shield. But you didn't have Steve be confronted by Richard Barnes and Peggy Carter. Now, of course, as we know, Steve should know these characters very well. But the thing is, Steve does not remember them. And this kind of leads into the idea of them, or they were going to, try to give us another origin story for Steve Rogers in this reality. But unfortunately, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it got canceled, and you did have our heroes go back into the main Marvel universe, restoring the original origin of Steve Rogers. But the reason why I'm saying all of this because for Steve, being confronted by Bucky and also Peggy and not knowing them, you didn't have Nick Fury appear. And for Nick Fury, he says, listen, we can't tell you how you know them or when you met them. But it's also Nick Fury saying, like, by the way, what you were told, the whole idea of Truman. Because remember, in the very first story arc for Steve Rogers in this reality, we had learned that he wasn't frozen in time. That technically what happened was, for Steve Rogers, he had a disagreement with the president after World War II because they had dropped the bombs in Japan. And he hated the idea of them doing that. And so what Nick Fury did was he used technology back then to control the mind of Steve Rogers to make him live different lives throughout the years leading into the 1990s. And so here we are now. It's Nick saying, like, there's a possibility none of that happened, which means how in the world did Steve survive from World War II up to until now? Like, what happened between these 2 points in time? But the thing is, we don't get the chance to learn it here. Okay, so it's time for us to finally wrap up our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality. As you all know, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, what they did was they basically tried to give some certain characters a fresh start. You see, in the late 1990s, as we all know, Marvel was struggling and some of their properties were no longer selling. Iron Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four. When it came to Captain America, he was technically selling, but he was also part of that package deal as well. But either way, when it came to Marvel, what they did was they had used Avengers X-Men Onslaught event as a way to push those characters out of the main Marvel universe, but into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn, to give those characters a fresh start with old creators that Marvel had brought back. Now, at first, it did seem like everything was going to work out for them, but by the 12th and 13th issue of each series, you didn't have Marvel say, you know what? Let's go ahead and take those heroes back over to the main Marvel universe. Now, after reading everything about Heroes Reborn, I can officially say that I don't really hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I felt like it was just okay. For me, the artwork was mostly okay, except for Rob Liefeld's artwork. But hey, that's not really me hating on him. It's just me saying, like, maybe, just maybe, I don't have a taste for his artwork. And that's really it. But for me, the biggest issue was the overall storyline. Like at first, all the stories were hitting, but then out of nowhere, they kind of felt like the stories were just all over the place, but at the same time, they were trying their best to connect with one another, and it became a huge mess. Now again, that's just me though, but with the idea of Heroes Reborn, the return, it's nice to see those characters go back into the main Marvel universe. But as we get into the opening pages of Heroes Reborn, The Return, issue number 1, we're really picking up with Reed Richards and Susan Storm. And for me, this makes a lot of sense because these two characters, their son is the reason why they're currently in a different reality at the moment. Because when it came to that Onslaught crossover, you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and a few other heroes besides the X-Men and Spider-Man and a few other characters who were, popular at that time, not go into Onslaught. The one who did, they all went into a different reality. And so for the Fantastic Four, they have been living a life in the Heroes Reborn reality like everything is normal. They don't remember their past lives in the main Marvel universe, especially when it comes to their son, Franklin Richards. See, this storyline was the one that established the idea that it was Franklin Richards who had created the Heroes Reborn reality as a way to save his family, but also the other heroes who went into Onslaught to hopefully defeat him. And so to Franklin Richards, he had created the Heroes Reborn reality. The thing is for Franklin, he does not know how to control his abilities. So he did not do it on purpose. It was a complete accident. But for Franklin, he's right now being confronted by Ashima. Now for Ashima, she is this celestial who's right now appearing as a human as a way to communicate with Franklin Richards, to let him know that he does have the ability to bring his family back into this reality, to reach out to them. But the thing is, she also says you have to make a big choice. Now, for this 4-part storyline, that choice is very important when it comes to our heroes coming back into the main Marvel universe. But it's also her kind of hinting at the idea that once he does decide when it comes to that choice, there's a possibility that he might have to leave with her and join the rest of the Celestials. Around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Franklin Richards, he was staying with Generation X. Generation X was the 1990s version of the New Mutants, a bunch of kids right now who are trying to learn how to control their abilities, and you had Banshee and also Emma Frost as their teacher. Now, around this time, Marvel Comics, for Franklin, he was classified as a mutant. So for Nathaniel Richards, he decided that his grandson should stay with Generation X. Now, there was a storyline where you had Black Tom attack the school. When he did, you then had Man-Thing being able to grab Franklin and the other members of Generation X. The thing is, for Man-Thing, he saw something going on with Franklin. It's the whole idea that with Man-Thing being like the protector of the nexus of all realities, he kind of saw something special about Franklin and kind of kept him even though the heroes were able to go back home to their school. But now we have to shift over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, he really does give us that example of a hero who was still popular in the 1990s and was not really affected by the Onslaught event, meaning that he did not go over to the Heroes Reborn reality. He was able to stay in the main Marvel universe. But for Spider-Man, it's him right now watching the news about the anniversary of when the heroes had disappeared. Of course, they're talking about the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, because for the heroes in the main Marvel universe, they believe the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they had died when it came to going inside Onslaught, not knowing that Franklin Richards had pushed those characters into a different reality. Now, I kind of want to sit down and talk about the Hulk for a moment. And the reason why, because the Hulk is a special character in his whole event. You see, when it came to Bruce Banner and the Hulk, they took down Onslaught. They were really able to beat down on him. Now, the Hulk did pass out, and so you were kind of left to believe at first that the Hulk would not go into the Heroes Reborn reality, but he did. Well, not him. Bruce Banner did. And so you had the Hulk stay behind, but for Bruce Banner, he went into the Heroes Reborn reality where unfortunately he was turned to Hulk all over again in that reality as well. Now we do pick up with this astronomer who's currently just watching this space anomaly make their way over to Earth. Now for this guy, he has no idea what it is just yet, but unfortunately he's not gonna know because when it does crash land, he's killed off. But we do learn that it is Ashima arriving to Earth as a human or appearing as a human as a way to be able to communicate with Franklin Richards. But as we do switch over to Franklin Richards, we kind of get the idea of how powerful he truly is. Because for Franklin Richards, he's holding on to this ball. That ball is the Heroes Reborn reality. And when the ball gets eaten by an alligator, you have Franklin use his powers, technically on accident, to kill off the alligator as a way to get his ball back. The Heroes Reborn reality. Now, this ball begins to show him different images, like for example, images of two different Hulks. The Hulk in the Heroes Reborn reality and the Hulk here in the main Marvel universe. And really, we do get a small glimpse in the other world where you do have Thor and also Ben Grimm fighting against that other Hulk at the moment, the one in the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have that fight going on, you have Franklin being able to see the fight, but only as small images appear on his ball. And he's very confused with the idea of what's exactly happening. But you did have Franklin be confronted by Ashima. Now for Man-Thing, it wants to protect Franklin, but you have Ashima send Man-Thing running away scared, but also on fire as well. But either way, for Ashima, she came there with a purpose. But with Ashima being there in the main Marvel universe talking to Franklin, it begins to affect the Heroes Reborn reality as well, because we do see the Fantastic Four just trying to have lunch together, or really more breakfast. But either way, for Susan, she begins to cry out of nowhere. And it's not like she's sad or anything, just something about her is happening. And that's the idea that the Heroes Reborn reality is about to change forever. Because as we do switch back over to Franklin Richards, who's still with Ashima, it's Ashima right now explaining everything to Franklin like, hey, listen, I'm a Celestial. I'm a very powerful being. Me and my fellow Celestials, we did experiments here on Earth. And of course, it led into you, a creation of a being that has the ability to warp reality, to create life. And that right there is pretty cool and all. But it's also her saying like, let me show you what you did technically on accident. And so she takes Franklin into the Heroes Reborn reality. And with her doing that, it's really more of her saying like, look at what you created. You made this reality. You put your family in this reality. But it's also her saying like, but it has to go. Like, you have an option here. You can say the main Marvel Universe Earth, or you can say this Earth that you had created. And so for Franklin, that right there for a young boy is a big thing to ask. Like, you're asking him to decide which world should go. But technically, his family is in the Heroes Reborn reality. And so to close on the first chapter of the storyline, when we do jump over to Reed and Susan, they're laying in bed, but then they're confronted by Franklin Richards. The problem is that they don't remember Franklin at all, really. But for Susan, she kind of does. And here's the reason why, because when our heroes went into the negative zone, they were also able to get like small glimpses of their actual past over in the main Marvel universe. And so for Susan, she's kind of like, I was in this part of the negative zone where I saw myself, a different version of myself that was able to have kids, and they had a son named Franklin, the boy right now that she's currently seeing. And so of course, she begins to freak out. But now we have to switch over to Doctor Strange. Now, when we do, it's really more of Doctor Strange being confronted by the fake Loki. And the reason why I say the fake Loki, because when it came to Heroes Reborn, most of our heroes were transported into this brand new reality, given new lives in that new reality. But for Thor and Loki, that was not the case. Now, at first, we were kind of left to believe that it was Thor and Loki from the main Marvel universe who were brought into the Heroes Reborn reality at first. But then out of nowhere, you had the real Thor appear. And the real Loki has been hanging out with Doctor Strange in the main Marvel universe. And so we're kind of left to believe that for Franklin Richards, he wasn't really able at first to transport a god into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so what he did was he created fake copies of Loki and Thor in that reality. And so for this Loki, at first, he still somewhat believes that he is the real Loki. But you have Doctor Strange tell him nah, you are not the real Loki. But while you do have the two characters talking to one another, well, that is when Loki freaks out. And the reason why, because something is coming after Loki in his reality. And that would be Ashima. And the reason why she's there right now killing off the fake Loki is because this fake Loki was, of course, being the god of mischief. He had his own plans, and of course, those plans involved both realities. But for Ashima, she made sure that Loki would not be able to meddle with the plans of the Celestials. But now we're able to work our way over to the Fantastic Four. And when we do, it's all of them right now just looking at Franklin Richards. But the problem is that none of them remember who Franklin is because they were given new lives in this brand new reality. Now, technically for Susan, she somewhat does remember Franklin because she saw him out in the negative zone. She saw that other version of herself, technically her original version. But you do have Franklin try his best to explain everything to the Fantastic Four. The problem is that he does mispronounce Celestials, and so with him doing that, unfortunately for Reed and Sue, they don't truly understand what exactly is going on. But you do have Franklin leave. Now, for Susan, she begs Reed to help out Franklin, to bring home their son. Now we do switch over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, we're technically going to use him as a way to bring the Hulk back into the picture, but also the idea of what's happening across the nation. All these different natural disasters just popping up left and right across the nation. And that right there is somewhat important because we're going to see a similar thing happening over in the other reality as well. But now focusing on the Hulk, there's a whole idea that when it comes to the Hulk and him being split with Bruce Banner being in the other reality and also Hulk being in this reality, there's some kind of energy he's putting off at the moment. And really, you have the military stepping in, Hercules stepping in, but also the Thunderbolts. Now, the Thunderbolts were created as a way to kind of, watch over the world with the idea of the Avengers no longer being around. But either way, for the Hulk, it's very concerning because he's putting off some type of energy here at the moment. And while you have the Hulk just popping off in the main Marvel universe, over in the Heroes Reborn reality, the Hulk is once again going on a rampage. And you have you're having Thor trying his best to bring down the Hulk. But then out of nowhere, a bunch of magma just pops right out of the ground. So you have Thor trying his best to protect innocent people. But while doing that, the Heroes Reborn Hulk, Bruce Banner Hulk, just disappears. But while you have that going on for Doctor Strange, he does find Franklin Richards' ball. And with him being able to find the ball, it's now him kind of wondering what should he do with it? Should he possibly bring the ball over to the Hulk? And speaking of Franklin Richards, who's still in the Heroes Reborn reality with Ashima, it's her telling Franklin, you gotta make a choice here. You got two options. You can go ahead and save the Heroes Reborn reality, or you can possibly save the main Marvel Universe reality. But you gotta make a choice here. And the thing is, for Ashima, the way she talks about the beings in both realities, they're like ants to her. They're kind of like small, lesser beings who she should technically not care about. But for Franklin, they are still people who have lives. they're still alive. And he hates the idea of her looking at them as lesser beings. Now, you do have this wild animal appear. And when it does, for Franklin, he feels bad about the animal. He asks Ashima to help heal the animal, which she does. But then right after that, she kills off the creature. And that right there ticks off Franklin Richards a lot. But it also shows how powerful he truly is, because with him being upset, he was able to release an attack to kind of send her back a tad bit. And for Ashima, she can't believe that his attack actually did hurt her somewhat. But then she realized he had disappeared. But getting back over to the Fantastic Four over in the main Marvel universe, they're also kind of showing us that things are popping off not just on Earth, but also in space as well, because you have two fireballs just making their way over to the Earth. Now, for Susan, Ben, and Reed, really all the heroes on Earth, they just got done with Galactus. So now you are possibly talking about the idea of some more space problems popping up. But you didn't have our heroes realize that earlier for Franklin, he had mispronounced the idea of the word celestials. And so once you have our heroes understand what he meant by it, they're kind of like, okay, we got some work to do here. Now, getting back over to Peter Parker, you have Peter Parker arrive at the scene where the Hulk is at right now, fighting against Hercules, the military, but also fighting against the Thunderbolts as well. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, when he does arrive there, he realized that the rain has picked up there where the entire area is being flooded. And you have the Hulk trying his best to keep the water away from him. But as soon as you have Spider-Man being able to land right on the Hulk, you have Doctor Strange fly by. When he flies by, he has that ball in his hand. And of course, that means our two heroes, the Hulk and Spider-Man, are easily transported into the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have the Hulk and also Spider-Man being transported into the Heroes Reborn reality, is also Ashima telling Franklin, like, if he does not choose when it comes to, which Earth to save, the Celestials will choose for him. And if they choose, then both Earths are going to be completely wiped out. Now, when the Hulk and Spider-Man do arrive in the Heroes Reborn reality, they're then confronted by Bruce Banner, who's currently the Hulk at the moment. And so as we do dive into the third chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with Ashima looking for Franklin, who was able to get away from her. Except when she does find Franklin, he fell down a cliff. And it does seem like that Franklin Richards is officially dead. But now we have to switch back over to the Fantastic Four. Now, when we do, it's really more of us picking up with the Fantastic Four, really more Reed working with Tony Stark. Now, when it came to Reed Richards in this reality, he knew that Tony Stark was Iron Man. The whole idea of Iron Man being Tony Stark's bodyguard, Reed did not fall for it, but it's really now Reed trying to figure out what exactly is going on when it comes to their Earth. And so for Tony, he brought some rock samples from deep inside the Earth to kind of see how old the Earth truly is. Now for Reed Richards and Tony, they can't find anything abnormal about it just yet. But for Tony, he'll be going into the negative zone to run a few more tests on the rock samples. Now, for Reed, he also tells us, the readers, the two fireballs that's heading over to the Heroes Reborn Earth, they sped up. So at first, they may had a few weeks, but now they only have like a few days before the fireballs do hit the Earth. But now we have to switch back over to the idea of having two Hulks fight against one another. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fighting against one another, you have our Hulk. The one from the main Marvel universe recognized that the other Hulk is Bruce Banner, but in this reality, unfortunately, he had turned to the Hulk once again. Now, for the Hulk, while being in the main Marvel universe, he kind of felt like he was incomplete, that he was missing his other half, but he could not understand why he felt like that. Now he understands why he did, because he didn't have Bruce Banner in his mind with him in the last year. And so now seeing Bruce Banner as the Hulk and kind of realizing what he was supposedly missing is him being happy about the idea of moving on, but also wanting to continue to fight against Bruce Banner, who had hulked out, to see who would technically win, but to also get rid of him. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fall off the bridge and fall into a river, you didn't have Spider-Man be confronted by the Avengers. And really, this is pretty huge because for Spider-Man, he believed that the Avengers were dead. But to see them alive in this other reality, he's kind of like, wait a second, I thought you guys were dead. But as we do switch over to Ashima, it's her right now standing over the dead body of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have the other Celestials tell her, like, you need to bring him back to life. Where, of course, she does go out of her way to bring him back to life. Except when she does that, it's also her now seeing that he is connected to all the different humans on the main Marvel Universe Earth. And so when she does touch him, she begins to get a crash course of the whole idea of the human race. And really, it kind of gives her emotions. Like, she begins to understand what it feels like to be a human. And so once she does recover Franklin and he wakes up and asks her, like, can I now go see my mom and dad? She says yes. Now, as we do switch back over to the Hulks, you do have something, or really someone out of nowhere in this aircraft, grab both Hulks and begin to take them away. Now, before we do learn like what exactly is going on, we have to jump back over to the Fantastic Four, because you do have Tony Stark being able to come back from the negative zone. And when he does, the rock samples that he had collected, they basically told him like the Earth is only a year old. And that can't be true because, well, our heroes, they're way older than a year old. And so for our heroes, they begin to freak out. But then they're confronted by Franklin Richards, who has returned to them. Now, as we do switch back over to Spider-Man and also the Avengers and also, well, the Hulks, we do learn it was Dr. Doom who had grabbed the Hulks, because it's Reed Richards saying, I need all hands on deck. Like, I need Dr. Doom here, Tony Stark here, Hank Pym here, Bruce Banner. Like, we need all hands on deck to figure out how to save the world. And so for Dr. Doom, him also telling us that when it comes to the Hulks, that they're leaking some sort of transdimensional energy. So of course, it's the whole idea that you have Bruce and Hulk being the same body, but with Bruce going into the other reality and the Hulk staying behind, you now have the Hulk kind of leaking out that energy. Now, for a brief moment, we do switch over to the sidekicks of Captain America. That'd be Falcon and also Bucky. Now, for those two characters just out there right now trying to handle some business out in the streets, the problem is that you didn't have those two characters look up in the sky. They see something. And so to close on the third chapter of the storyline, you do have Fantastic Four, really all the heroes coming together, and really more Reed kind of catching everybody up with what Ashima had basically explained to the heroes. But here's the thing, because while you do have our heroes trying their best to figure out like what is their next move, they hear all these screams coming outside from the city. And when you have our heroes look up in the sky, what they see is Celestial, who has now decided what to do when it comes to Franklin's reality that he had created. So as we dive into the final chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with the idea of our heroes all gathering at the Baxter building, because now it's time for them to go ahead and just head back over to the main Marvel Universe by using the vessel that Dr. Doom had used earlier in this storyline. Now, for Dr. Doom, Reed, Tony Stark, and Bruce Banner, they kind of agree on the idea of working together to find a way to save this reality as well, but also still going back over to the main Marvel Universe. But now we have to switch over to Captain America. Now, when we do, is him taking Falcon because Falcon is the same one we had back in the main Marvel universe. But of course, he now has to go back home to the main Marvel universe. But for Bucky, she can't go. And the reason why, because she was not from the main Marvel universe. She was created in this reality. And so she does not understand why Steve and also Sam get the chance to leave, but she can't go with them. And the thing is, she has built a friendship with Steve Rogers. As we do switch back over to our heroes, is our heroes now telling Ashima like they don't like the idea of the possibility of this world dying. And so it's them saying like, yeah, we'll go back to the main Marvel universe, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this world sticks around. Now, she says no because, again, the Celestials said Franklin has to choose one of the worlds. He chose this one to get rid of, which means that if you guys try to back out of your word, then that means both worlds are going to be destroyed. Now, it's also her informing the heroes that she does plan on taking Franklin right after they do arrive back in the main Marvel universe. But because you do have all the heroes coming together and they all have different personality, but all have the same purpose, the idea of seeing this world survive, for Ashima, she does change her mind. But at the same time, when she looks at Franklin, that really makes her change her mind, seeing him. Because earlier, while she touched him, she was able to get a crash course on what it's like to be a human. And so for Ashima, she's down with the idea of letting this world survive. But either way, the heroes still must go back home. Now, the question is, where is Tony Stark? And for Tony, he has to say goodbye to Pepper Potts because in this reality, this was not the original Pepper. And technically, we already knew that because, again, she was not there when it came to the big battle against Onslaught. It was Franklin who had created her just for this reality. And so for Tony, it's him saying goodbye, but also him saying like, I love you, but I gotta go. And so this leads into the moment where you do have our heroes begin to make their journey back over to the main Marvel universe. Now we do learn that they have to travel through this reality's version of the negative zone. And the reason why, because there are actual borders at the end of the negative zone. The end borders of the zone is where Franklin Imagination ends. And so once they're able to pass those borders, they'll then be able to go back into the main Marvel universe. Now, for Ashima, she does leave. As a matter of fact, she does get rid of her human form. But while she's leaving, for our heroes, they believe that they're going to make it back there and everything right now is going very smooth. Except that is when Doctor Doom does, well, Doctor Doom things. Because for Doctor Doom, what he wanted to do was siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. And the reason why? Because then he could use that energy to become a god, to rule over the Heroes Reborn world, but to also go after the Celestials as well. Because he believes with Franklin powers in his, he should be able to bring down the Celestials if he's able to siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have Thor get in the way. And with Thor getting in the way, you do have those two heroes kind of get lost in the journey where we don't know truthfully where they go to in the storyline. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom, he does get transported back into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so with that happening, it does lead into another storyline down the road where he does rule over the Heroes Reborn Earth for a brief moment. But this does kind of lead into the ending of Heroes Reborn Return, because once you do have our heroes being able to get back to their reality, you then have our heroes being able to remember everything that they had forgotten about when they left the original Marvel universe. Now, for our heroes, they will kind of end up in different parts of the world. Like, for example, I think Steve Rogers does end up in Tokyo or Japan, or somewhere in Japan. But while you do have Bruce Banner arrive back in this reality alongside with the Hulk, you do have the two characters being able to come back together as one. Now, Now, we also learn here that with Ashima basically being able to save both realities, she did return into her original celestial form. But unfortunately, she's now in this eternal slumber forever. And so, for Bucky and the other people out in the Heroes Reborn reality, they get the chance to see the reality continue on. But for our heroes, they're now back in the main Marvel universe. Now, I'm kind of thinking about the idea of us kind of covering just some stories that took place after Heroes Reborn to kind of see how the heroes try to adjust to the idea of coming back into the main Marvel universe. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. See you next time, guys. Later.